Hypocrisy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Lawsplaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And with me today is a very special guest, Mr. Robert Gruler. How's it going, man?
That's good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on all late in the day like this.
It is. It's very nice and intimate. You know, it's like my blood pressure is able to come down a little bit because I'm home and away from the office. So I'm kind of jacked up on adrenaline all day. And now here we are. It's evening time. Pace is a little bit slower and we can get intimate.
Yeah, I was just commenting on the pace of your show yesterday because you run like a tight show. You're like, here's a topic, here's a topic, here's a topic. It's all organized. And here I am, like, lazily going through. I'm like the lazy river at a water park, like just floating around through 3 hours of nonsense.
Well, look, listen, there's something beautiful about what you do and the format that you do it in. And I actually like that. I mean, my, I'm sort of cheating on my live streams. What I like to do is, batch them up into 3 segments and then I clip those segments out. So it's sort of like I'm doing batch recording, but kind of a live show. And there's something nice about being able to sort of have that real slow roll, like a Joe Rogan format, where you just kind of talk through things. So
yeah,
I appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you. It's an adventurous disaster every day. So, anyway, first thing I wanted to kind of lay out the structure here as people filter in, because the YouTube does the weird thing now where the live stream starts and you've probably seen this too. The live viewers that are waiting disappear and then they build up slowly over time. I don't know how or why that happens, but then other people filter in from other shows and stuff. And also they expect me to be late, so it takes a while. But so I like to waste everybody's time at the beginning. But then
I do the same thing. I got that big, long, drawn out intro, and just give everybody time to mosey on in here. So I get it.
Yeah. So we'll do that for just a minute. But then I want to get to know you a little bit. When I went on your show the other day, which was super fun, by the way, you got to know me a bit, but now I get to do the same thing and beat information out of you about who you are, how you came to be on this horrifying platform. And then I figured we'd go and talk about some of the major criminal cases that are out there. My thoughts are Shauvin, because it's big news going on. And then also we've got Kyle Rittenhouse, who had his last pretrial appearance today. And now we have some motion deadlines and stuff coming. So I'd like to talk to you about kind of what your thoughts are about those 2 cases. And then we'll see where the night takes us. And I have a strong feeling that the chat will ask something degenerate and horrible and embarrassing of you at some point.
Love it. I'm an open book. Let's get into it.
You say that now.
I had the chance to take a look at your Twitter when you notified everybody, and somebody had a question about, balls or no balls or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm in the general vicinity of what to expect, but you're right. I'm probably not.
well, we'll put you through paces. We'll figure it out. Okay, man. So, let's start with this. You are Robert Gruler Esq, which means you are a lawyer. So what kind of law do you practice? Where do you practice? Do you practice? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So I'm a criminal defense lawyer. That's all that I do. And I've been practicing law since 2013. I was an intern before that for about 2 years. And we have a law firm in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's called the R&R Law Group. We've got 6 attorneys on our team, and we've got about 20 different people who are part of our entire support staff. And so we help people with any type of criminal charge. It could be DUIs, drugs, domestic violence, felonies. So we've been, and that's all that we do. There's a lot of other law firms that sort of will take anything that kind of comes through the door, family law and personal injury and trusts and estates and all that stuff. And we just decided not to do that. So we focus exclusively on that. And we've been doing it for, some time now. And, fortunately we've been able to grow a firm. I think people appreciate the tone that we have, some of the promises, some of the things we stand for, and then of course the results that we deliver. and it's been a lot of fun. It's a very fast-paced area of law, and we're helping good people. So it's been very rewarding.
So what drew you to criminal law? You just said you said something that I think when a lot of people hear criminal defense lawyer, it's a little their brain goes the opposite way, but you said we help good people. So I what drew you to criminal law, and then if you could expand on helping good people. I mean, these are criminals, right? They're accused by the police. They must have done something wrong.
Yeah.
Uh
Well, allegedly, right? Allegedly. So it starts out allegedly, and yeah, I think you're exactly right. Most people are sort of conditioned to take a look at anything a police officer says or anything that anybody in a position of authority says, and just take that as gospel and believe that. And my story in criminal law is actually a little bit maybe unorthodox, I would say. So I actually wanted to be a prosecutor when I was in college. I was this, really conservative, gung ho, law and order type, somebody who wanted to, clean up the streets. And I sort of even saw a future in politics for myself, maybe, and so I was going to go down this really aggressive prosecutorial path. Go
right.
out there, clean up the streets, put the bad guys behind bars, and do justice for my community. And then, of course, work your way up the district attorney's office, then run for some position at some point, run for office. Then the next thing you know, you're governor or whatever. So when I was in law school,
I love
I
how that works.
was, what's that?
I said I love how that works because that is how it works, right? You prosecute for a while, you land that high profile case, you get a big conviction, it's major news, and then all of a sudden you're governor. It's like, well, I mean, he put that guy in prison, now he's qualified to run the state. But
Yeah,
that's
it
how it
is.
goes.
It's a very common path. I mean, listen, you can be vice president if you run it right. You can go through a sequence where you kind of, somehow get into state politics, and then you just work your way up the chain. Next thing you know, you're attorney general, right? She was a prosecutor. I'm talking about Kamala Harris, if anybody's missing this, but she was attorney general, put a lot of people behind bars and made a lot of fun of them when she was going through the process, sort of mocking them for wanting food and water and things like that. So she worked her way up. She becomes a senator. Now she's vice president. So, and arguably the president, depending on who you ask. So,
Yeah.
you know, so it's just it's a charted path that a lot of people go on. And so I wanted to go down that route. I thought this might be a good following for me. And what was interesting when I was in law school, when I was a 1L, that's your first year student, they did not want me to do much of anything. So they didn't want me to, go and volunteer anywhere, or be an intern anywhere, or go work at the county attorney's office, or go, get a summer externship program or any of that stuff. They said, hey, no, it's your first year. You got to keep your nose in the books, get your sort of bearing straight, and then you can go do those things in your second and third year. Well, I didn't like that idea, right? I really
Right.
didn't actually like much of law school. I mean, it's fun and it's good, but I wanted to get out there and be where the action is, right? I was sort of coming right out of college, tired of 4 years of school. Show me some action, baby. Let's get out there. So I wanted to be a prosecutor, and because I couldn't go intern at the county attorney's office, which is where the prosecutors work, they wouldn't take me, and there was no official programs. So I just reached out to a criminal defense law firm here in Arizona, and I thought, I'm going to go work for those guys, and I'm going to go see how these scumbag criminal defense attorneys handle themselves, so
Yeah.
that I can be a better prosecutor, and I can go back out there and I can just crush these guys in court, because I'll know all their inner operations, right? I'll know the inside scoop on how these defense attorneys operate.
Right.
And when I got there, I started to actually have to work with people. I started to actually have to deal with the client who was facing a DUI case, right? And so, like, sort of to your point, many people look at that individual and they say that guy's a criminal. That guy's an awful person. Throw the book at him. Shouldn't have been drinking and driving. All of that stuff. And really, that was kind of my perspective going into this law firm. But then I start dealing with that guy, and that guy's a father, a brother. He's got kids. He's going to lose his job. He's going to get deported. You can come up with whatever sob story you want, but it's not just a sob story. Like, this is reality. These are
Yeah.
people that are going through very difficult times. They're not bad people. They're not criminals. They've got an alcohol problem. They're recovering from, some trauma. We're all broken in our own ways. And some of us just happen to fall into bad positions, and we just happen to get caught for that, right? And other people do excuse me, do not. And so I started to deal with these people in these positions, and I would have to negotiate with prosecutors. And I would take somebody who's very empathetic, somebody who was somebody worth fighting for. And I would say, Mr. Prosecutor, I have this person who's going to lose his job. He's going to lose custody. He's going to lose all this stuff. And the prosecutor would just come back to me and say, well, that's just sorry. Like, that's too bad. There's nothing we can do about it. There are mandatory sentences, mandatory penalties. My boss says this. And so the whole system felt broken. I would find somebody that absolutely needed a deviation or a break, and I couldn't get anything done with it. And I
Right.
started to look at these prosecutors, and then I'm starting to, I'm sort of watching people that have sort of like their souls kind of just sucked out of their bodies. They're just operating like pure automatons, and they're just processing people through the system. And it was so sort of shocking to me that I just decided I would never be on that side of the aisle. I could never do that, because I am somebody who cares about people. I care about freedom. I care about people living their lives, and I want people to sort of be able to recover from their tragedies and do something meaningful. And the system that I thought was set up to help them do that absolutely was not. And that was kind of a big revelation for me. And that's a long story, but it was earth jarring for me in a way that I just realized I can never go down that path.
Yeah, and it's a long story, but it's a necessary one. And it's a very good one because that's what you run into when you start dealing with criminal clients. Is like th- no one wants to have their entire life measured by their worst day. And that's what the majority of criminal clients, when they're going beyond like a petty thing, right? We're not talking traffic tickets here. Although for a kid, that could be the worst day that they've had in a while. But when you get into adulthood, when you're talking about people losing, custody of their kids, losing their jobs, losing your house. I mean, you get incarcerated for a period of time. You're not going to necessarily be able to keep up with all the payments that you need to make. You have to have someone taking care of that for you, and a lot of people don't. So, but when you start running into them, you're like, this outside of this thing that they either did or didn't do that we're worried about, they're kind of normal. And you're talking to them, and you're talking about video games, or you're talking about going out and playing golf or whatever they might be doing, or just heck playing with their kids, their high school reunions coming up, whatever it is. And you start to realize it's like we get these little snippets of people's lives and news stories, but when you start working with them, you realize that that's a person, and there's this tiny portion of them that did something, and it might have been maybe they're guilty. That's hard to kind of determine, at the outset, and it's not really our job to do that. But maybe they're guilty of it, maybe they did it. But even if they did, that's a sliver of time in their life, and the rest of their time is really built around being much more normal. Um, so I really I empathize with that story quite a bit, because I had a similar approach. I wanted to be a bank lawyer. I wanted to, but like, I'm going to go represent the corporations against these scrubs who can't pay their mortgage. That
Yeah.
was like my thought. And it was like, that'll be a nice, secure job or whatever. And then, about halfway through law school, I was like, oh God, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that at all. And then I got out, and I wanted to do criminal defense. But at first, I wanted to work for the county attorney, get some experience in there. I thank God they didn't hire me, because I think that would have been awful. I'm not a big fan of them in general. And I don't think it's their fault, right? It's the system that they're in. They've got a ton of files, and I think processing people is kind of how they have to do the job that they do. It's not like they're all bad, just most of them. Uh,
Yeah, I try not to beat up too badly on them, right? I mean, I try to be empathetic to sort of everybody, our clients, as well as the prosecutors, as well as the police. And, on our channel, we hold them to account, no question about it. This show is called Watching the Watchers, right? We
right.
we are very aggressive on making sure that they're held accountable and that they're being transparent. And so, I think there's an appropriate balance between, being overly aggressive, towards them, and then recognizing their humanity. But I would just expect them to do the same for our clients. I would expect that same standard to be applied. And unfortunately, it's just not, and when I sort of criticize our justice system, it's just that. I think it's the system. I think that there's a lot of good people in it, prosecutors, police officers, judges, court clerks, bail. I mean, everybody, right? A lot of good people in there, but they're just sort of broken down by the culture and by the system and by a lot of the, even a lot of the politics that we see. There's a lot of sort of momentum to not do anything or at least until recently. I mean, remember this justice reform stuff is just kind of a new conversation. I've been screaming about it for a long time now, but until
Right.
George Floyd and until Breonna Taylor and Rayshard Brooks and Dante Wright and the list goes on, we really haven't been speaking about it much. And so, now the question is, all right, well, now that it is at the forefront of everybody's mind, what are some appropriate solutions, maybe that are worth discussing without villainizing everybody on both sides?
Yeah, and that's the hard thing. That was one of the things I saw with the Floyd case specifically is the day Floyd dies, it's on the news, everybody's watching it, and I go, okay, now we're going to get a chance to talk about injustice or about the idea of officers interacting with citizens, to put it lightly, right? And we can talk about this, and then the riots happen, and that conversation was shut off immediately because
Yep.
the divide went like this, and then suddenly the innocence or guilt of George Floyd and Derek Chauvin became political issues rather than practical issues, and that's a really sort of frustrating thing. And I'm not immune from that either. I'm not like accusing everybody else from some lofty position. I look at it and as a defense attorney, you go from defending Floyd's actions to then defending Chauvin's actions, even though he was the government official, but then the government, turns on him. And so you're having to look at all these different sides and it becomes this big mess. And that has been really frustrating with all of this stuff. But one of the things I wanted to go back to, you said that you find people who it's like it's appropriate for them to get a break. Like, this is the type of person we want to cut a deal for. Like, this is the type of person who doesn't fit in prison, because if they go to prison, it's going to be only bad. If they stay out of prison, they're not likely to reoffend. They have lots of rehabilitative potential. They're amenable to probation. Heck, sometimes they've been on probation already for a year to 2 years by the time you get to trial. And so it's like, these are the people we want to cut the deals for. And then that's where I find the prosecutors are like the least willing to do it. And you come across a news story and it's like, oh, this guy did a armed robbery and beat the bank teller with the butt of the gun, and he got 5 years probation and no jail time. And you're like, what the hell is this?
I know, but but then the mom school teacher, who's just taking her kids to work or to school or whatever, she gets the book thrown at her. It happens all the time. And some of it, I think, has to come back, down to the sort of the size and the scope of the bureaucracy. So in Arizona, our Maricopa County Attorney's Office, I think it might be the biggest, civil agency that we have here. I mean, it's huge. It's got all of the civil law, all of the criminal law, all of water right. I mean, everything. It is a massive organization, a lot of money, and a lot of throughput there. A lot of people are coming through there. And so they've just turned it into a system where it is very rigid. I mean, we actually have sentencing charts. When somebody comes in and they've got a class 4 felony and they've got a prior or 2 priors, what do? We actually open up a book or a pamphlet is really what it is, about 19 pages. We open it up. We go down to one of the pages. It has the chart that we need to go to. We just go down the chart. All right, little scroll down, class 4 felony, go over 2 columns. That's a category 3 offender. All right, boom. And we have a date range. And that is it, right? The prosecution, the government, that's all that they can do because we have mandatory sentencing.
Right.
And so, and listen, the government has a difficult time here as well, because mandatory sentencing was sort of put in place to eliminate some of the racial disparities that we don't want in our justice system either. Because what would happen would be you'd have a judge who'd take a look at a black kid, give him 10 years, take a look at a white kid, give him 2 years, and we'd go, well, that's not right. That's totally inappropriate. So we'd say, well, we're going to make it mandatory across the board. All right, well, so now everybody just gets terrible sentences,
Yeah.
and all of these sentences are sort of, getting worse and worse and worse. When's the last time you heard a politician come out, until recently, with the defund the police, which is also asinine? That's a little too far the other direction.
Right.
But when do they come out and say we're going to reduce penalties for drug crimes? Right? It never happens. So it always gets worse, and it goes from 1 year mandatory to 2 years, and then to 4, and then to 6, and then before you know it, we've got the biggest prison population in the world. A lot of people are sitting in there for nonviolent offenses, and we have social unrest all around the country because people are sick and tired of it.
Yeah, I love the analogy you gave. It's like the one kid gets 10 years, the other kid gets 2 years. We go, well, that's not really fair. So then we make it. But the thing you left out is that when they changed it, it was so everybody got 10 years.
Right.
It's like
Right.
they never, it's like, wait, no, like let's, we can do less prison time. We can do that for a lot of different crimes. But then for other crimes, can we get a lot more prison time? Like
Right.
that's the weird thing. It's like when you had mandatory minimum sentences hit for drug crimes, you have a person with like 3 potted plants of marijuana growing in their house. That was 15 years mandatory minimum sentence. And then you have someone who rapes someone, and they're gonna get 18 months. And then they're going to have 2 years of probation. It's like, this is wrong. We want to flip out how those prosecutions are happening. And I find that we have violent crimes not being given the type of sentencing that we want to see from people who have particularly, like, there's a propensity for violence there in general. Because people can have a bad day, but usually that bad day doesn't end up with them beating someone senseless
Right.
or robbing them with a gun. That tends to have some other baggage with it. And so it's like those types of things are the things I want to see people get real prison time for, maybe have better rehabilitative programs geared towards violent crime in prison. But then, things like drug crimes or financial crimes or whatever, it's like, do we really need like long prison sentences? Is that the goal of this, is just to put these people away and then spend a bunch of money on them the entire time? That doesn't make as much sense to me when I think a lot of those things, theft crimes and stuff like that, could be someone made a mistake. They got desperate, or they had a bad run of things. And so then they go into it. But I do love that the answer that we had was, well, everybody needs more prison then. It was like, no, that's not what we want. That's not. And that's the thing that you mentioned there at the end. The civil unrest is rising because people are tired of being incarcerated or seeing their friends and family go away. I mean, everybody is one relative going to prison away from a red pill on criminal justice. Like, and watching what that, just the system, even if you beat it, what the system can do to you over the period of the trial. Just sitting under a felony indictment is devastating for a lot of people.
Well, I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many stories that I've heard from people coming into our office who say, I just called the police because my husband sounded angry, and I just wanted them to come and just calm the situation down. Right. That's it. And cops come in. He's got, a bloody eye, and the house is torn to shreds, and he's dragged out. Wife's dragged out. They're all in handcuffs. Dogs running wild. The whole thing turns into this chaotic mess. So then they come into our office because he got charged with some domestic violence crime, which was totally asinine. And now she's the victim. Now he can't return to the home. They've got kids. I mean, the whole thing is like a nuclear bomb went off for the family. And it was all because, somebody called for some help because we just wanted a little bit of help. Turns into this entire ordeal. So then they come into our office, and the first thing they tell us is, I will never call the police again. Never, not ever once again, ever. And I'm going to tell my whole family not to call the police again because of what happened. And, I think it just goes down to the kind of the fundamental question. You asked it, what are we trying to do here with our justice system? Is it about punishing people? I mean, is it really? We got to ask ourselves as a society, are we a society that wants to just focus on retribution? an eye for an eye. Somebody does something wrong to us, we go get vengeance out of them. Is that the level of sophistication that we're at now? Or maybe there's something that we can do that's a little bit deeper. Instead of focusing on retribution and punishing people, talk about, not everybody. There are some people who are violent maniacs, and I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the people with drug problems or alcohol problems, or they've been abused as children, and they've got some social disorders, or they got mental problems. We all didn't start from the same spot in life, and some people have a little bit of other disadvantages. And unfortunately, our justice system is built in a way that just doesn't recognize those. And so
Right.
as a society, the question then becomes, is it time to maybe pivot a little bit and focus on more meaningful justice rather than just beating people? I say this on my channel, and I heard it from a guy named Joe Polish, but he says you can't punish the pain out of people. People are going to be in pain, and we're trying to punish them, and we expect them to come out the other end like functional citizens, even though we've invested nothing into them. When they go to prison, when they come out, it just compounds. They've got a criminal record. They've got debt. They're on probation. They can't get a job. Nobody wants to talk to them. And so what do we expect? We're creating this cycle of repeat offenders, and that doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve the hard-nosed, law and order types, because it doesn't actually fix anything. And
No.
so I'm just, I'm trying to do my part to sort of shake that out there into the world a little bit. And I'm hopeful that people are starting to at least engage in the conversation, and I really think they are. I mean, we are talking about this a lot more than we were, even a year and a half ago.
Right. And so that's a good pivot point to talk about how you decided to get onto YouTube, when you got onto YouTube, how that progression has been going. I mean, your channel's doing great. You got 115,000 subscribers. You got a very active live stream community going, which is awesome. So how did you go from, hi, I'm Robert, I defend criminals, to to, hi, I'm Robert, I'm on YouTube, I also defend criminals? Like, how did that transition go? What's it look like for you? Because I mean, I'm lazy, right? I went, oh God, I could just talk on YouTube, and I could do that instead of all the hard, like, legal work. That sounds better for me. I'm going to cut back the legal work way quite a bit. But you're much more active. Like, you actively practice. So how does that work? How do you balance it out? What does it look like for you? And how'd you get
Yeah,
there?
it's a good question. So it's been a long progression. I have been, sort of evolving, and I've gone through different phases in my, YouTube slash law firm career. Obviously my baby is the law firm. The law firm is something that my business partner and I started in a spare bedroom in my house, like on this folding table. I mean, I have a picture of it. It's hilarious. And then, how far we've come by just grinding, grinding, and grinding. So that is sort of, that's my base point. That's always my baby. And that's because that's sort of our interface with the community. That's when I get on YouTube, I'm talking policy, I'm talking high level, but what we do every day is we help people in court. We've got a whole team of people. That's what they do. They wake up every day, and we're helping good people through the justice system. So I'm very proud of that. YouTube started sort of was born out of experimentation a little bit back in 2014 and 15. I just needed to figure out how to market the firm.
Hmm.
And I started to make these videos that were really, really bad. And they're still on the channel, actually. You can go back and look at them. They're hysterical. I mean, they're absolutely hysterical. And I can't even believe it. I'm like, you couldn't figure that out in 2014? Like, what was wrong with you? But it was the first iteration of it. And what I was doing was a lot of informational videos, just a lot of info content. So I would say one of my first videos that really did well was about photo radars, because we would get calls all the time about it. People would call and say, hey, I got flash. What do I do about it? And I was finding myself having to sort of answer these questions all the time, like a lot of them, because we were very good at it. We were getting them dismissed. We were a brand new law firm. We were young. We were taking all these civil cases. We don't do much of that anymore. But it was good. We were sort of keeping the lights on and helping us get started. So
Hmm.
I made this video, put it on YouTube. It was like 20 minutes long. I explained the whole process of how to beat a photo radar and what to do and service a process and all that. And it went well. And so I started doing a lot more informational videos, only for the purpose of generating business for the firm. Really, I mean, really providing value. Answering questions, 10 minutes, 20 minutes of helping people so that they don't even need to call our firm. Well, what happens is they call anyways, because you've helped them. And
Yep.
so people will call, and we started, getting business. So I started to continue to do that for a while. And then, we were just hovering around like, a couple hundred subscribers for a while. And I started doing some public speaking back in 2019 and then early 2020. I may have mentioned it to you, but I'm a recovered alcoholic. I don't drink. So I was going and speaking at different treatment centers around Arizona. And so when I was doing that, I was out there interfacing with the community. Well, COVID hit in March and I couldn't continue to do that anymore.
Right.
So I stopped all that, made a hard pivot, and I started watching The Watchers as a once a week, just a live show. Cause I'm like, I don't know what else to do for the firm. I need to continue to engage with with people. So I just started the live stream. And honestly, man, I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but that was March of 2020. And we've grown pretty nicely, I would say. But it's been sweet. We crossed 100,000 subscribers, and we've been covering a lot of the stories that you've talked about. We covered heavily Kyle Rittenhouse. We covered Breonna Taylor pretty heavily. Rayshard Brooks. We've talked a lot about George Floyd. We did trial recaps on the Derek Chauvin trial every day. I mean, we were all in on that.
I was so
And
jealous.
it was a lot of fun, man. I got to tell you, it's like I've never sat through a murder trial, right? I've been practicing law for a long time, but I've never done a murder trial.
Right.
So I got to kind of watch through the whole thing, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm sharing this stuff back with the team and just having a ton of fun. But what happened with YouTube is we crossed 100,000 subscribers. I'm like, yes, finally, this is so cool. Like, this is crazy. And it kind of feels like a duck in water. Like this is a perfect fit for me. I love to talk. As you can hear, I'm still just rambling on and on and on and not even giving you any opportunity to speak.
That's fine. Making my job easy.
It's just, it was a kind of a good fit. Well, we crossed 100,000, and that same week, I think, or the same next week or whatever, we got demonetized, the entire channel.
No.
So we don't have any live chats, super chats. We don't have any ad revenue. They cut all of that back off in February. So they just they just crushed the whole thing.
Why did
and they didn't really give us a reason for it. They said it was harmful and dangerous content, and that we were dangerous to our viewers. And I was thinking, what? So I pinged Team YouTube on Twitter, and they're like, oh, well, sorry, reapply. This was back during a lot of people got cut off back then, right after January 6th. Yeah. I was part of a whole group of people. I'm very grateful that some other people like you and Viva and some others, weren't caught in that, but I was. And there was a lot of other people, and it wasn't just a conservative thing either. My understanding was there was some other left-leaning channels that got nixed, but we've been demonetized the whole time. They told us to reapply in March. I did, still nothing on it. So they told us they'd answer back in 30 days, still nothing. It's been about 81 days. And then, very frustratingly, I know I'm going on and on about this, but I think it's probably important for other people who are interested in YouTube.
Yeah.
But they told us that it was harmful and dangerous. I still don't know what it was. I went through their rules and I was digging through it. And I think if I came to anything, it was the body camera videos that we did some deep dives on. Some of those got marked as 18 plus. So it may have been those. So I deleted all those. I talked to another huge YouTuber that has like 2.7 million, subs. And I asked him like, hey man, help me with my channel. And he told me, delete those. So we did that. Then shortly thereafter, YouTube changed their policy back. So we got an email, you probably got it, that said, oh, the body camera videos, we know that people find those educational and valuable, so we're going to let those back on. So, all right, fine. So they boot us off for a policy. Then they bring the policy back. Then today I get an email that says that they're going to start running ads against your content, even if you're not in the partner program. So they threw us out, and then they're going to run ads against our content. And I'm like, oh
my God. That's terrible, man. I did not know that you were demonetized. Here I am thinking you're trucking along, monetized and doing great because your videos do well. Your live streams do really well. And I had no idea. That sucks. I hate, and that's the problem with YouTube is it's literally a light switch, right?
Yep.
And then trying to get the light switch turned back on requires you to drive to the power company and help them like refix a boiler. or something before. It's like, wait, no, why can't I just, you should just flip the switch back on. That's crazy. But you are, so just so everybody knows then, cause I didn't know this. I would have been much more proactive here. You're on Locals, right? And that's been a way for people to engage with the channel and also support it when they can't do it through the show itself.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm shilling Locals every opportunity I get just to encourage people to go over there. And it's a great platform. I mean, I'm very excited for where it's going. And I tell people that, it's a bummer. I'm very grateful that this is not my full-time job. Fortunately for me, I've got my law firm and I've got revenue from those sources. So this is kind of just something I do, for myself, truly. I mean, I have a lot of fun doing it. It's for the
Right.
audience, and we do generate some business from it. So it's still something that works for me. But I know for many other people that this is their full-time gig. That would be devastating, and it just breaks my heart that there's no better way to flesh some of this stuff out, because I try to play by the rules. I mean, I try to keep a clean show. I try to, I get political, and I push and I get aggressive with things, but I follow the rules, and I try to be somebody who adds value to the conversation. And so it's just kind of a bummer that, those get stifled by the powers that be.
Yeah, that's awful. But yes, everybody should check out Robert on Locals. We're gonna mention that a couple times during the show because I like Locals as a platform. I really do. I think they're doing a great job, and I think everybody should go and support the shows that they like. And certainly, if you've been cut off from YouTube's monetization, that's, oh god, that's something that is so irritating to me. Like I think I think literally everybody should be monetized on YouTube. I don't think it should be a partner plan thing. Like it just do what they do and say, well, you don't get a payout until you hit $100 in ad revenue anyway. And the
Right.
overwhelming majority of channels aren't going to do it, right? They'll never get there. But I don't see why it's such a hassle. But I guess with tax reporting and stuff, maybe that's the reasons.
Well, I don't
But
know how that makes sense, though, because that email that I got today says that they are going to still run ads against people who are not even in the partner program. So
right.
they're going to be collecting revenue off people's content. They're just not going to allow them themselves to earn any revenue.
Yeah, they'll get revenue. YouTube will get
Yes.
theirs. And that's a beautiful thing. I think there's actually possibly a some deceptive practices cases that are going to be in the works on that. I really do see YouTube's monetization stuff. And I think we're going to see this across a lot of big media, but YouTube specifically, their monetization, where they're telling people that their content is not advertiser friendly and then running ads on it and making money off of it, is something that seems to run afoul of at least California's business code, and probably Texas and Washington state and Oregon, and probably about 40 states at least, but maybe a few in the Southeast don't. But I think most of them would find that objectionable. And it just takes the right case for it. So let me do this. Let me read. I'll rub it in your face that you're not monetized, and I'm going to read some super chats, and then,
Sure.
then we can
No,
start.
get it. Yeah, let's do it.
Then we can start talking about cases. Okay. Andrew War Snowboard says, I've worked for the same company since 2012, and for the first time in that span, I no longer want to. I don't know what else I'd do, but I'm open to suggestions. Woke is bad. Wait, still that same company from 2012? I know this guy personally. And yeah, you should do something else. I don't know what, but go find something. Like find yoga or something. I don't know, man. But that was not a good place for long-term growth for you. Wolfgang Deo says, "Hey Rob, love you as always, and it has been a while since you've seen a super chat from me. Balls or no balls on Futa? The question Locals forgets." Okay. So are you familiar with a Futa?
I am not familiar. No.
Why? Why is this my job? Why does the internet make me do this? Okay, so Futa is short for Futanari. It's are you familiar with anime? Like at least in passing, right?
Yeah. I'm familiar with anime.
Okay. Do you have a favorite anime?
I do not know.
Okay, I was just checking. Uh, closet weeb, Robert Gruler here. No, okay. So a futa is an anime girl uh, who is also equipped with a penis, I guess is how to best word it. And so then the question would be, should the futa have balls or not?
Uh,
And I
okay,
deeply
so
and
I
humbly
see.
apologize.
So yeah, so the question, yeah, so it's just sort of it's a
It's a
question of
preference.
completeness.
Well, completeness or preference, whichever. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, as a man who has the full package, I think you got to go with the full package. I mean, it feels incomplete to me.
Yes! Ball squad for the win. Okay,
I
perfect.
think.
No, you win. You got the right answer.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. Thank you for answering correctly. Chat is BTFO'd. And that's what they get for being horrific degenerates. Um, Yashken says, hey, other lawyer, balls or no balls, also have fun. We just answered that. I think that question's going to come up about 40 times. They literally hate me. They're like, well, look, he's got a guest on. It's a respectable person who's a lawyer. You know, it's fine. Let's make this chat as horrifying as possible. Nix Hex says, Greenlandic law splaining word of the night. You need to stop Unitarakwa Kagit. This guy's learning Greenlandic language. Okay, so thank you. Wolfgang Deo says, why did we never get Greenland's electoral votes? Okay. He says, I am pretty happy about our president. The destruction of his reputation, everyone on his side will be total. Never again may this happen. Wolfgang Deo says, waiting for Rekieta Law, May 21st, 2021 at 9 p.m. Current time, 9:02 p.m. Officially late and gay. Let the record show. Yes, I was late. It's okay. I'll tell you guys why, though. So we got everything set up, Robert and I found this feature. I found where the virtual camera was in Streamlabs. And I'm like, cool. I can use my same camera to go through the Google Meet program we're using and Streamlabs. And I have it set up. It's all good, I thought. And then I blanked out the screen to get the stream going. He's like, I can't see you. And I went, oh yeah, it's going to broadcast what the audience is seeing to him. And that's not helpful. So I had to switch to a different virtual camera setup. So I now have OBS running and Streamlabs and Google Meet. It's a mess. Like I said, I'm never going to be good at this in my entire life. All right. The Pie Baker says, Robert, should the Federal Unemployment Tax Act have 2 reserves to dispense from, or have no reserves and dispense from nothing? And would you recommend a client to leave a voicemail on his mid-divorce wife's phone threatening to kill the judge's child, the judge in their case? So that's 2 questions.
Yeah, the first question is something outside of my wheelhouse. Definitely, I would defer that to an employment or housing or whatever that question was. Sounded very technical,
Right.
and that sounds like a smart lawyer should answer whatever that question was. The second question, though, I can easily answer, and that should be a no. Do not do that act. Whoever's hinting at that. Not a good idea, right? We've actually worked on cases like that, where somebody calls and blasts an elected official or something. Doesn't work well. They don't respond nicely to that. They show up at your house with a lot of very angry men. So it doesn't. It's not well advised on that one.
Yeah, that one is. That's an interesting one. The whole idea that you would. It's interesting in 2 ways, because one, it seems like common sense. Don't threaten a public official. But when you get into the intricacies of defending threats, like a lot of things that they call threats aren't threats. Like under criminal law, they're not. Because of the First Amendment, we have so much protection on speech. Threats have to be pretty specific. They have to be imminent. They have to be designed to intimidate. Like it's not just simply me saying, hey, I'm gonna kill you or whatever. Or no, my favorite is like, I'm gonna put you 6 feet under. That's probably not an actionable threat, even if you mean it. because it's idiomatic, and you can't really, at least in Minnesota, you can't use idioms in prosecuting threats because they're not specific enough. But I don't know how it is down in Arizona. Do you have you had many threat cases down there?
Yeah, actually, we have. So COVID produced a lot of them, believe it or not. COVID had a lot of people calling their elected officials and screaming at them, and I mean that, and making things that sort of fall into that category. That's a gray area, and you mentioned it, like somebody says, "I'd like to do something to you," or "I'd like to do something to your wife." That doesn't mean I'm coming over and doing that, or that there's any possibility that that could actually be effectuated. But it is, there's a legal answer and there's a practical answer. Like legally, maybe they can't prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. Practically, they're going to show up at your house with a SWAT team, and I can tell you that because I've seen it. And they will come in, whether or not they're justified under the legal First Amendment principles under constitutional law. It doesn't really matter. They think that somebody important has gotten threatened, and they're going to make sure that there's a show of force. And it can get very aggressive. And so, even if you're somebody who ultimately gets your case dismissed or worked out to a lesser plea deal, you still got to deal with being arrested and having your house torn apart and all that stuff. So it's just
Right.
like, I like to speak out against, the bureaucracy and authority as much as I can, but at the same time, you got to do it in a way that is practicable, so that you don't have your house invaded by a bunch of guys with guns.
Right. So just for the chat, for the benefit of the chat, this is legal advice. If you are saying, "I'd like to do something to your wife," make sure what you're saying is nice and that she'd like it.
That's good advice.
Public official.
Yeah, like I'm going to buy you flowers, sweetheart. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to do something to your wife. Your husband can watch from the closet. BG Willia 21207 says, "Robert, finally we got a true counselor with jury experience to overrule that ambulance chaser and convince him of this." I think he's talking about you versus me, which is rude. I am way too lazy to chase an ambulance. Oh my goodness. So your job is to convince me that India and Australia do in fact exist. And I thought it was going to be balls or no balls, apparently, but no. I have determined that India and Australia are both fake, but that's, I don't know. If you want to have an argument over it, we could at some point.
Well, I'd like to hear your argument.
It's simple. Have you ever been to either of them?
No, I haven't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No one has, actually. It's a trick question.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, both of them are too hilarious to be real places. Like Australia, everything there kills you. They sent all of the criminals to some giant island that no one else apparently wanted to be on, and then they formed some sort of functional society after being literal murderous criminals, and then they bred like the hottest women on the planet at the same time. But everything literally in the country is trying to murder you at any given moment. None of this adds up to me. It's also on the underside of the disc, so that's another problem with it.
Yeah, you mean on the flat Earth that we're living on?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually think that your Australia argument is actually quite compelling. The India one, I'm not so sure on, because I've seen Indian people. I've actually, I think I have. I think so. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure I have. I think actually we might have an Indian person working for us at our office, maybe.
Oh,
But
see,
I
you're
could be
gonna
confused about this.
He's in on it. He's in on India.
But I'll tell you this.
Oh, go ahead.
Those Australians, though, you can't tell, because they sort of look like us, right? So they just have a weird kind of accent, which could easily be faked.
Yeah, everybody can do it.
Yeah, you could all do it. So I think that's pretty compelling.
Yeah, India is simple. Australia is a government conspiracy, clearly, but India was created by 4chan. And there are too many jokes to go through, and I won't put you through it, especially if you have an alleged person from India on your staff. So,
Well,
Trump Willis is my name. Says Kamala sucked the poll to get where she is. This is just facts. Now answer the question, or you can't handle the truth. Balls or no balls. There's going to be 50 of these. Dovin Death says, "Have you talked to Robert about the Lucas Gerhard case?" I have not, but are you familiar with Lucas?
No, unless you give me, I may have seen it, but
okay,
not offhand.
Let's quickly talk about it. I'll give you the facts. This is one that I I personally would love to see more people talking about. I need to talk about it again. It's been a while. Lucas is a kid up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And when he was heading back, he's conservative. When he was heading back up to school, he took a picture of his AR-15 on top of a duffel bag, and he said, "Bring this up north to watch the snowflakes melt." And by snowflakes, I mean snow. He drives to college. He's got the rifle with him. He arrives on campus, immediately goes to the campus armory or whatever place they have, and he checks in the rifle, because you can do this in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan because people hunt. So you can bring your stuff. So he goes straight to the place, checks in the rifle, and gets arrested. And he's arrested for terroristic threats because of that Snapchat that I just told you about. He was held for 80, 81, or 82 days in jail without a hearing. And then he was they got a habeas corpus hearing and got him moved to house arrest. That was in November of 2019. He is still on house arrest. He has still not had his trial. And he is just stuck at home with his dad, who's a retired Marine colonel. Very nice guy as well, by the way. But yeah, so the terroristic threats. Oh, so he posted it. I shouldn't say he posted it to Snapchat. He sent a Snapchat to some of his friends specifically. It was not like a general post. It wasn't posted up on Twitter. And one of those friends showed someone else who actually has him blocked on Snapchat. And that person took a photo of the phone looking at the Snapchat and reported it to police.
So received a message that wasn't even ever intended for that person. What's this guy's name? Lucas what?
Lucas Gerhard. Gerhard.
All right. No, I had not heard about that one, but I mean, oh my goodness. That's in your neck of the woods?
It's Michigan. I'm in Minnesota.
Okay.
But I saw the story back in 2019. I covered it briefly, and then I got in touch with some people who were more familiar with the situation, knew the family, and I've talked to the dad a couple times. I've never talked to Lucas, but I've talked to the dad a couple times, and I've talked to the attorney that's actually fighting the case right now. The other problem that they had is at the hearing to get his ankle bracelet removed. The attorney who was representing him at the time was doing it for the how do I put this, for the social media recognition. And he went on Facebook the night before the hearing, bragged about how he's going to blow the prosecution out of the water, kind of laid out his strategy. And when he got to court, he got manhandled. And this is my favorite part. So, the prosecuting attorney starts playing the New Zealand Christchurch mosque shooting video in court. And his attorney did not object to this. And then after that video played, the judge said, yeah, he's staying on house arrest.
What?
Exactly.
What?
It's like, wait.
What?
First of
okay. All right.
The prosecutor, that's misconduct. Second, that has no relevance to the case, or anything to do with, that's happening in New Zealand, not in Michigan. He's not in New Zealand shooting anybody. The judge should have shut it down. The judge did not. And most importantly, the second they're like, we're going to play this video, the defense attorney should have been like, wait, what video? You didn't send me any videos that you're going to play. And then they start playing the Christchurch video. Mistrial, Your Honor. Yeah, this is ridiculous. But since then, he has retained new counsel, much more competent counsel, who does a lot of stuff up in Michigan. But it has been really tough for the family. I mean, this kid's been locked up for, since I think August of 2019 is when he was initially arrested. And, when school's starting up.
Yeah, this happens all the time, man. People get forgotten about. It's like somebody somewhere wants to make a political statement. You get some prosecutor who is responding, to the political winds at the moment, anti-guns or anti this or whatever. So they pick up some kid or somebody or some group of defendants and they try to make examples out of them. And we're seeing a lot of this still going on with the Capitol Hill riots and a lot of those people who are still in custody, right? I'm not making
Right.
any excuses for anything that went on that day. But at the same time, we want equal justice across the board. If they're going to be giving the Antifa people all these smoking deals, these sweetheart diversion deals where they take some classes, remain law abiding, and then get a dismissal of the charges, well, why don't we get the same benefit for people who are maybe not of that same political disposition? And this kid is another one of them, right?
Yeah.
This kid is somebody who is not in alignment with that political ideology, and he's getting the book thrown at him. Meanwhile, people who torch and throw Molotov cocktails at the federal courthouse in Portland, no problem at all.
Not to mention the two lawyers in Brooklyn who Molotov the police car. They got
Yeah.
sweet deals too. It's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. They Molotov cocktailed a police cruiser. And their lawyers, it's not like they could plead that they're too dumb. Like,
Right.
I mean, I guess they could, but yeah, what are you in for? Oh man, I stole $1,000 worth of jewelry from a pawn shop. I'm facing 10 years in prison. What did you do? Oh, I threw a Molotov cocktail at a federal courthouse, but I pled it out. I'm getting 6 months probation.
Yeah.
Wait a
Yeah, the other guy's in there for 60 years for, selling a used blunt from a weed, It's like it is really it's kind of hysterical, but it's insane. It's not funny actually. I mean, it's not funny because
No.
we have people who are sitting in custody. But what's funny about it is it's like it's so obvious. I mean, the double standard is so glaring that it's you can actually look at the court documents. I'm not making this up. You can look at the documents. They're out there. I've talked about them on the channel. It's two tiers of justice and it's being enforced based on political ideology.
Yep.
And that scares the hell out of me. I don't like it going either way, right? I don't want a weaponized Justice Department either direction, whether
Right.
it's, even if it's a I'm not a fan of the government largely, but I don't want some libertarian Justice Department to go in there and start prosecuting everybody. That's not the right answer. So it concerns me, I think, on a more fundamental level because I don't want our justice system to go down that road.
So real quickly, just you mentioned the Capitol riots, and I have not been following them as well. Uncivil Law has been covering, I think, every prosecution that they're doing. You've been covering them. I know some other people have. But what do you think about the revelation from the medical examiner that the officer died of a stroke and the cause of death was not found to be any specific thing at the Capitol riots? Do you think that's that seems like that would be impactful? I think because they had some felony murder charges going, I believe, but I might be wrong on that. Do you?
Yes. So I don't think they ever got to any of the murder charges. They were really, really trying. They charged two people with, I think, assault on Officer Sicknick, which is the officer who died. And this was the officer that the media was just running hog wild with his name, which is really shameful in my opinion.
Right.
To try to take somebody's name and sort of capitalize on their death. This guy, we didn't know how he died. He died, right? That kind of doesn't matter. Sympathies to him and his family, and may he be remembered, and we can cherish his service to his country and to his police department. But was he killed by the Capitol Hill rioters? Because that's a whole different question. Because
Right.
now we're talking about charging people with crimes, and we're talking about sort of besmirching an entire political party based on the actions of potentially one or two people and one officer. If it was in fact the result of them killing him, which it turns out it wasn't. So the original allegation was that he was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher. So that during that initial mayhem, when they were sort of storming the building, there was a fire extinguisher apparently that flew around and hit him in the head. Then he went to the hospital and ended up dying the next day. Well, it turns out that maybe the fire extinguisher didn't hit him. Maybe it was empty. Maybe he was wearing a helmet. Maybe, it was not him in general. And then the allegation switched now. So then it wasn't about the fire extinguisher. Then it switched over to bear spray, kind of pepper spray, this
Right.
really, really aggressive bear spray. And then they found two people who they thought may have sprayed Officer Sicknick with bear spray. But then we take a look at the body camera and a lot of the photographs from the scene, and everybody was spraying bear spray. There was pepper spray and water and all sorts of stuff flying all over the place. And when you sort of reconstruct it, you can see that there's from the officer's body camera, there's just a cloud of mist all over the place. So how can you ever connect that to those two people? It seems like a stretch to me. So anyways, they charged those two guys. I think they're still in custody. And then, lo and behold, we have FBI Director Wray, who gets hauled in front of Congress. What happened here? We have the Capitol Hill Chief of Police now, Yoganda Pittman. She gets called in. What happened here? Sergeant at Arms for both the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives, they get called in. What happened here? Everybody's pointing fingers at each other, but nobody wants to give us the answer about what actually killed Brian Sicknick. Something like months later, even though his death made it into the impeachment articles that the Democrats submitted to impeach Donald Trump. So they were running with this narrative for a very long time. They had no evidence to back it up whatsoever. We tried to have congressional hearings to draw answers out of the people that should know what the answers are. And then it comes out, autopsy comes out. Months later, it was in fact natural causes, and and it has nothing to do with the bear spray, nothing to do with the fire extinguisher. Impeachment's already done and over. They've already got this whole, they're sort of weaponizing the Justice Department to go against these domestic violent extremists or whatever, this new category of, anti-Democrats, I guess. And so they're just weaponizing the entire system on the back of this guy's death. Totally inappropriate. And a lot of defendants are now sitting in custody still because of this. They're being held without bail. All of their cases have been continued for like 60 days because the incompetent prosecutors out of DC and the federal circuit over there, they can't apparently prosecute something like 400 cases. They can't get it together to add in an extra, couple hundred cases a month or every couple of months. So it's just embarrassing, and it's a due process problem. And it's totally inappropriate. And I don't like where it's going because it doesn't feel like it's stopping. They're starting to sort of circle the wagons and bring in other people to roll out even deeper policies and deeper, surveillance. And they're talking about domestic violent extremists now. We were talking about foreign terrorism. Well, now they're sort of talking about domestic terrorism now.
Right.
So what happens when this continues to unfold? I'm not excited about where it's going.
Yeah, me either. And the interesting thing is there's still I've seen it recently when they talk about the Capitol riots. It's always something like which had loss of life or whatever is how they're saying it now, because they're not credit to the publication. They're not talking about Brian Sicknick anymore, but they are still referencing that. And the way that they're doing it is it's a trigger to people to go, oh yeah, that the Capitol Hill officer, he died there. And then the other officers died the next day because he took his own life or something like that. And then it's like, wait, but the only person that I'm aware of who died to violence at the Capitol was Ashley Babbitt.
Right.
And she was shot by Capitol Police. Now, I do think I'm grateful that they didn't do what they probably had the authority to do. And I don't think people realize, but they probably could have swept the halls of the Capitol with gunfire and really made it a big mess. And they did not do that. That's the good news. But how they've been going after people for it, how they've been trying to weaponize it, as you say, and compare it to this is the new 9/11 and stuff. It's like, wait a minute, this is a day of protest that got a little out of hand. And at worst, it's the same as all of the other days of protest in 2020 that got out of hand. I don't see how it's particularly egregious, except that it brought fear to the people in power where they sit. And I think that's the big thing here. But I wanted to ask you about that since someone brought it up. So thank you. Jackson Ward says, finally, this stream happens. Grateful to both of you for your defense of freedom and liberty. Hey, thanks, man. Levi Sorensen says, spend it on something nice. Maybe you and Mersh can do a butt together. By Robert. Okay. Evil Bunny says, okay, if we're really going to show our degeneracy, you should explain to Robert how much you love Cuck Simulator and why. Cuckold Simulator is a independent game on Steam, and it's very, very funny. It's
a real thing.
It's a real thing. A guy made it. It costs $2, and it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. I will treasure it forever. Um, okay, I want to move into talking about Derek Chauvin and Kyle Rittenhouse, two cases you've covered extensively. I mentioned I was jealous because, yeah, you were covering all the Chauvin stuff, which my goal or my plan was to live stream every minute of the trial. And then I had to go to Florida to visit my parents, which was great, except they started the trial while I was on the plane. And then I'm in Florida at my parents' house, and there is not like a place where I could set up and stream for 8 hours a day.
Right.
And so I missed out on almost all of it. So I wanted to do that. You actually did cover it very extensively, and Kyle Rittenhouse. Which one do you want to start with? Which one's your favorite?
Either one. I mean, they're both kind of in the news right now. We can go with Chauvin. I'd say we already kind of touched on some Chauvin stuff.
Yeah, let's go to Chauvin then. So how's Chauvin doing? He's
Chauvin's having a rough time. He's not acclimating to his new home well, but there are some interesting things happening with the case in general. Today we talked about it on our show. It might have been today. I think it was yesterday actually, but there was an affidavit that was filed by Eric Nelson and his co-counsel. Her name is Amy Voss. They submitted two documents to the Hennepin County Superior Court, fourth, whatever court that is. And both of them were saying that we were not the people who leaked information about the plea deal to the New York Times. And so I sort of just jumped right into that. That's a big deal.
right.
If somebody leaked information about a pending plea deal to the media, very, very big deal. And the fact that we have Eric Nelson, who is the defense attorney for Derek Chauvin, now submitting an affidavit, which is sworn, he's basically avowing to the court, I'm telling you, I did not do this thing. And that's a big statement. That's a big deal because now we know by process of elimination, well, who else is out there, right? Who else had this information? Who else was privy to the plea deal? And, did they disclose that to the New York Times? The backstory here on this, just to sort of fill everybody in, when there was, this was back in about February, there was, before the trial started, remember that Derek Chauvin has three other co-defendants. And so Tao and Kang were also submitting motions in their criminal cases to tell the judge essentially that there was malfeasance going on. There were problems with this leaked information. Apparently, Bill Barr, who was the attorney general back under the Trump administration, he was apparently in conversations with Derek Chauvin's prior attorney about a global plea deal, something that Derek Chauvin would serve 10 years in prison for in exchange for dropping any pending federal claims and dismissing the other two charges. So he would have taken a plea deal. Well, the reason why that's problematic if you're a defendant is because if that leaks out and the jury knows that you're contemplating pleading guilty, that shatters the entire facade of your defense, right? It shatters the presumption of innocence, which is the basis of the defense. And so when this happened, the New York Times, I think, published it, and then it trickled back down to the Star Tribune, which is, of course, in Minneapolis. They published something about this back also in February. So Eric Nelson, then the defense attorney, came out and said, Judge, back in February, I was in fact contacted by a New York Times reporter, and they said they wanted to meet. I told him I'm not commenting on the case. Turns out that reporter met with another attorney who was representing, I think it was Kang, so one of the co-defendants.
Mm-hmm.
So when that attorney met with this reporter, the reporter showed up and had had the state's entire appeal before it was filed. Had the document in his hand before the government filed it. So then the defense attorney's reading this document that this New York Times reporter is giving him, and he's going, "What the hell is this? Where'd you get this? It hasn't been filed yet." So, okay, he said, "What are you talking about? A plea deal and all this stuff? Where'd you get all this information? You shouldn't have this information."
Right.
So then he goes and he tells Eric Nelson about this. Well, lo and behold, that afternoon, that same motion, that appeal that was on a motion to continue problem, it gets filed in court. So the reporter was like ahead of the curve. Then it gets filed. And so now now all the co-defendants and all the defense attorneys are sort of scratching their heads saying, who was talking to that New York Times reporter? And why did this guy have all of this really privileged information? So then Eric Nelson and Amy Voss come out and say, no, it certainly wasn't us. They signed their affidavits back in March, right after all this happened. And they just filed them this week in court. So if they're not responsible, who is?
Right. And the big thing about them filing these affidavits is we know there's a motion already filed for a mistrial, and the grounds of which are going to be discussed in an upcoming memorandum of law. We haven't seen what it is, but we can imagine they're going to invoke Shepard and talk about undue media influence. And this is similar to that undue media influence, but it branches off a little bit because this necessarily involves someone giving the media this information improperly. And that is the question. And the timing of the the news story about him taking a plea deal. This is before the jury's being impaneled, which certainly means that it gets the maximum amount of reach. It hits the New York Times and the Star Tribune, which are going to be probably the two highest circulated papers in the Twin Cities. It was covered on, every major media channel as well. So everybody on that jury had the possibility of seeing that story, and it's highly prejudicial. But the things I noticed that he was talking about as well are, it's not just that they knew about the plea deal. He alludes to the fact that they had details about the plea negotiations. And that speaks to, that's something that even in like civil cases, you're not really supposed to disclose the detail of plea negotiations at all. You're not really supposed to do that. When you start getting into the civil case or into a criminal case with a prosecutor, with the state disclosing the details of those negotiations, with the press, we've got a real big problem here. And so that I think is going to be factored heavily into the mistrial document. That's why they're filing these. It was the 17th that they filed them. Although the Minnesota court is great because they have the original affidavit, which had the unredacted phone number of the New York Times reporter. And then there's an order on the 20th, and accompanying a corrected affidavit, but they hadn't taken down the old one yet. So it's still there on the court's website. Good job.
Yeah, they wanted to pull the phone number out, right? The first one had some private info, and then
yeah. But yeah. So I guess I know my opinion on this question, but I'll ask you what you think. Does it matter if the person who divulged the information to the New York Times is a Minnesota state attorney, or if they are a federal attorney or some sort of staffer involved with the Department of Justice?
So this is a great question, and I don't actually know the details of it because I don't obviously practice there. But I was reading through an article, I think it was on lawandcrime.com, that was doing an analysis on this. So I got some of the background information for our channel. But when I was reading through the rest of the article, sort of the thesis here was that let's take worst case scenario. Let's say that it was Keith Ellison, somebody from the Attorney General's office. It was Steve Schlucher or whatever, right? Anybody who's on the prosecution team. Let's say one of them did in fact leak it. So the thesis here was if they did, they would still be allowed to do so under Minnesota ethics laws. And they went through all of the different rules, and they were sort of like weaving away where you could do it, essentially, where you could sort of disclose this because there's not strict prohibitions on, certain things, and again, I didn't dive into it too deeply, but the hint was that this could have been more nefarious, right? This could have been an actual tactical strategy. Like they could have intentionally disclosed this, not secretively or anything. And that even if it did come to light later down the road, that the ethical rules say that they're allowed to do that. So I don't know what the technicalities are, or what the ethics rules are, how all of those things interface with one another, but it was an interesting angle that I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, I have opinions on Law and Crime blog, and their biases. But
Sure.
that being said, I'm more interested in the mistrial question. Something can be ethically done, I suppose, but still result in a mistrial. Like the attorneys for the state may not be culpable for disciplinary action, but I think the divulging of the plea deal, if it came from the state or the federal government, like to me, I'm of the point where that prejudice is something that can't be undone, and the fact that might be inconvenient for the prosecution at either the state or federal level, that doesn't bother me, that's inconvenient for them, because our system is built on guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and the full respecting of the right to due process. And I think that process gets subverted when you go ahead and divulge that someone's thinking about pleading guilty. It because we know, how do I word this? People are only supposed to plead guilty if they're actually guilty, but we know
Right.
that a lot of people who plead guilty aren't necessarily guilty. It's just the evidence against them is really dramatic, or they don't have the resources, or the risk versus the plea deal is just too much. So people would rather take a charge. They'll take 6 months probation, or they'll take a couple weekends in jail or whatever, but they are not going to go to prison for 10 years, and
Right.
they'll just take that criminal record, especially if they work a job where a criminal record isn't the worst thing in the world. If they're not in banking or something like that, and they can still get work. So for me, like, we know this, like, courts know this, everybody knows that this happens, but still the idea that he was pleading guilty is prejudicial to me. And so that bothers me about this whole thing. I'm really curious to see what the memorandum is going to hold. Cause I think they're going to have to make I don't know if any particular issue on its own is fully strong enough. So I think they're really going to have to go with like a holistic approach. Here are all these little things that happen. And it's all evidence of not having a fair trial. But
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. I think that this memo is going to be very, very, very big, and it's probably going to be very comprehensive. And I agree with you. I think that when you start kind of going through the laundry list of all of the kind of little problems that may turn into bigger problems, I mean, there is just a lot of them, and you can just run through them. You got the $27 million settlement. You've got the Dante Wright shooting right in the middle of it. You've got I mean, the list goes on. I got a list like 7 things that happened. I wrote them all down. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but it was a lot of them, right? There's a lot of problems here with this trial. And the idea that this was was fair and impartial, when we're taking a look at what the judge is doing for the 3 co-defendants, gives us a good indication that maybe it wasn't, because the judge granted continuances in all 3 of the other officers' cases to push them way out into next year. I don't think their trials are going until 2022. I could be wrong on that, but pushed them out because it's too hot. It's too volatile for them to have a fair and impartial trial. We already knew that,
yeah.
right? We had the Brooklyn Center unrest. I mean, we had a lot of activity in that case. And not to mention, Maxine Waters sort of parachuting in from California and, saying
Joe
that if we
Biden.
don't get justice, if we don't get a conviction, we're going to burn the city down and all this, and like it's language like that.
Well, and Joe
Are,
Biden praying for a guilty verdict,
right.
saying that publicly, which is just entirely improper, in my opinion. You can, after the fact, you could say we were praying for this outcome. We're really happy about it. We think justice was done. But prior to the jury making their decision, to have the president of the United States come in and comment about how a case should go seems a little bit, it's just one more notch on the scale to me. And I think that, full disclosure, I think it's very likely that Chauvin could be found guilty under Minnesota law. Like, I don't think that there's any problem with finding him guilty specifically. But the problem is not whether or not someone is able to be found guilty. The problem is whether it's done properly. And at this point in time, I'm not fully convinced that it has been done. But
Yeah, I'm no fan of Derek Chauvin, right? I don't appreciate anything that he did. I just look at the way he sort of composed himself that day. I don't, I've seen cops like that. I get that personality. Not a fan. But I'm also not a fan of people being convicted for crimes that are not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. I agree with you. I think that you could say, yeah, there's enough evidence here that maybe the jury, found the right verdict. But I've also got a lot of questions about it. And one of them starts with the fact that Dr. Andrew Baker, there are some things, he's the guy who did the autopsy of George Floyd. His testimony, he was the government's witness, and his cause of death testimony was different than Dr. Tobin's. Dr. Tobin said it was low oxygen and asphyxia caused by the knee on the neck. Well, Dr. Baker, the guy who actually did the autopsy, said it wasn't that. He said it was a combination, essentially, of coronary heart disease, hypertension, mixed with methamphetamine use and fentanyl, high levels of intoxication, also combined with law enforcement subdual and neck compression, right? So it's sort of a more totality of the circumstances analysis. And when you've got the government's own witnesses disagreeing with themselves about the cause of death, I don't know what else you need for a reasonable doubt. I mean, that seems pretty friggin' obvious to me. But, what can you do in that situation when you've got everything stacked against you? President, vice president, you've got got mayors and all sorts of people throughout the entire infrastructure in that environment. We're all going one direction. If you're a juror, how do you row against that tide? I think it's virtually impossible.
Right, right. And the other thing with Dr. Baker's testimony that was laid out in the motion from King, I think, was this it's the allegation of the witness intimidation that happened. And regardless of the witness intimidation that occurred or did not occur, we have his initial medical report saying no signs of asphyxia, and then we suddenly have asphyxia being included in the testimony and the final report. And it's like, okay, there's some discrepancy there, and I'm not so sure that discrepancy gets the attention that it needs in the jury's mind, because it's like, okay, wait. So first, he's changing his diagnosis in the middle of all of this public pressure. He's changing his diagnosis. Then when he testifies to it, then the other expert testifies to a different cause of death. And it's like that's a lot of doubt.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, it's pretty doubtful. Yeah.
And then we find out from the juror, Joshua Miller. Is that his name?
Brandon Mitchell
Brandon Mitchell. Joshua Miller. That's not even close. Brandon Mitchell. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Brandon Mitchell was juror, I think 56 was the juror that he was. And then he came out and he was sort of making the media rounds. He comes out and he says something to the effect, he's on, I forget what channel he was on, CNBC, one of these, one of the big ones. And I think she was an African American news anchor, and she's asking him specifically about the importance of Black people getting on juries. And he says something to the effect of, well, we need to get on there so that we can effectuate justice. Like kind of implying that there's a specific outcome that he's endeavoring to achieve by getting on the jury. Not like this idea like, well, we need more African American peoples on juries just to have a jury of our peers, right? We want equal representation. We want a legitimate jury. That's not what he was talking about. He was sort of implying that I'm going to get on there so that I can effectuate social justice or social change. And so then he was, going around saying those things. Then lo and behold, we find out that he was at a Washington, D.C. protest that was apparently for MLK Day. This was back in 2020, I think near the end of 2020 in December. So he was at this protest, and that comes out. Somebody finds information about this, and he says, oh, no, it wasn't a George Floyd protest. It had nothing to do with law enforcement or defunding the police or anything like that. It was all about civil rights and MLK. And we all go, great, that's great. MLK's an amazing American hero. We love the fact that we're out there supporting civil rights. Well, then we find out he's wearing a t-shirt that has a picture of MLK, but also BLM on it. And it also says, get your knee off our necks on his shirt.
Yep.
Before he's impaneled on the jury. And the problem with that is during when the jury questionnaires went out that were sent by the court to the public, one of the questions was, have you ever attended a protest that was involving, that was, I think, intending to voice disdain with police? And he said, no, I haven't. Very obvious that he had. He was on a podcast, also wearing the shirt in a number of different pictures. He had an agenda, and he made it onto the jury, and there was a conviction.
And not to mention that Floyd's brother and sister were speakers at the MLK rally as well.
Yes.
So to even suggest that it had nothing to do like that, you could maybe countenance that the rally itself was celebration of MLK and that that it had a focus on him, but to suggest that there was nothing to do with police uses of force and racial violence is absolutely disingenuous. And I read that jury questionnaire that he answered no to, and it absolutely is the wrong answer.
Right.
There's no mincing of words that's made in how it's worded. It's very clear. There were two questions. One, have you attended a rally in Minnesota? in regards to this? And the second, have you attended any rally anywhere that deals with these issues? And the crazy thing is, if he had said yes, he probably would have still been on the jury. Like, just what rally did you attend? Oh, I was at the MLK thing in Washington because I went to celebrate the life of Martin Luther King and celebrate civil rights and the anniversary of that. And I think that's really important. I don't think Nelson's going to strike him for that. He might have, but you know, he didn't strike a lot of people with some questionable answers, and I'm not criticizing him on that or anything. You know, you can't strike everybody, and not all questionable answers mean bad jurors. But he didn't strike some people with questionable answers. I don't think that answer is going to get him struck automatically. Now, if he comes out and he's like, yeah, look at my shirt.
Right.
My favorite part about this guy is you notice he immediately lies when the picture of the shirt came out. And he goes on and he says, oh, I don't remember having that shirt. And then, of course, it comes out that he's pictured multiple times in the shirt. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I was wearing the shirt. Like, of course you were wearing the shirt. What, did someone Photoshop you in to the picture with your nephew or whatever? Like, that's weird. No one did that. But I think that it's all of these little things combined that I think make this such a case that's ripe for a mistrial. When he was first convicted, I didn't think that they had much of a chance at a mistrial. I really didn't. Even if you think that the decision that the jury came to is not correct, I don't think you're going to get an appeals court to overturn that jury verdict. However, since the trial has ended, we're waiting for sentencing, but since that time, we've seen all of these little things, and it's like Nelson probably just wakes up in the morning and starts jotting down all the junk he's reading in the news. He's like, this one's going in, this one's going in, this one's going in. And I think you're right. We're gonna see a very long and comprehensive motion for a mistrial, and it's it's gonna be a long read. But yeah, so very, very cool stuff on Chauvin. Thank you for sharing. Let me get these couple chats, and then we'll talk about Kyle Rittenhouse, because I have a very specific question, and I've not gotten very many answers on it other than my own opinion. And I know I'm right, but I want to see if other people agree with me. Yes. Loric Project says the state of Washington is fighting with Hobby Lobby over vaccine passports. Okay, sounds good. Vaccine passports are very in vogue. One state just outlawed businesses from mask mandates and vaccine mandates. I can't remember which state it was, but yeah, they just signed into a law preventing private mask enforcement, which I thought that's a little bit, I don't know if that's going to hold up. I feel like a business could say, we want you to have a mask in our store or whatever. I don't necessarily agree, but I think they could do it. Bad Vibe says, Robert, watch out for the law knows he could take your eye out in HD now. Thank you. Thank you. Bad Vibes. You helped my self-esteem so much every time.
I've got one too, man. Look at this thing.
It happens in law school. It's the Pinocchio effect.
Yeah.
Right? Because they make you lie in that advocacy class that you have to take.
Because you're smashing your face into a book. Mine was. That's why I got wide.
Mine was when they made me lie in the advocacy class in the representations. Like, do this deposition. It's like, but it's all fake. These are all lies. Yeah. I don't want to do it. Okay. So I want to ask you about Kyle Rittenhouse, and I want to ask you a very specific question to start it off. Is Kyle Rittenhouse guilty of unlawful possession of a firearm as a minor in Wisconsin?
So it's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. Is he?
I say no. I say no because the statute itself has a subsection. It's 3C or whatever. It's the last one. And it says that this section only applies to long rifles and shotguns if they're not compliant with another subsection, which is related to short barrel rifles and short barreled shotguns, or these two hunting regulations. And one of them only applies to kids under 16. So he's out of that one. And then the other one is simply a hunting license course completion requirement for achieving a hunting license. But I think about this and I go, he's not hunting.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why he would need a hunting license or what would be required. The statute says it does not apply to a long barrel rifle for children who are 16 and 17 years old. That's it. And you're in a hunting state. I don't see where he's guilty of this crime.
So that's probably the only statute in the Kyle Rittenhouse case that I've not read, that one in particular, because I just is the reason you're asking that because you sort of think that that is the pretext for any of the additional charges. Like, in other words, he was in violation of the law at that moment. Therefore, the self-defense, any of those, I mean, I think, is that what the argument of the prosecution is, that he was in violation of the law by being in possession of the firearm, therefore using self-defense in any of the subsequent interaction, it's not applicable because he was already in breach of the law. Is that sort of
I don't know
why
if
you're asking
they're
that?
I don't know if they're going to be that brazen in their actual prosecution, because I mean the reality is even if he were guilty, at least as far as I can tell, even if he were guilty of carrying as a minor, that doesn't negate the right to self-defense. And I don't see it negating the right to self-defense under the justifiable use of force statute. But I do think that they'll try and wiggle that in there as premeditation, because that's what they're going for. He went to this protest with the intent of discharging his firearm into a protester. And I think that's their strategy. I think it's a bad strategy, but I do think that's there. But it's mostly, I started looking at the statute mostly because I saw so many comments on Twitter, in the YouTube comments, saying, well, he was illegally carrying and therefore he doesn't get to defend himself. And I'm like, well, that's not how self-defense works, but let's look at this statute and break it down. And I cannot come to the conclusion that he can be held guilty of this crime. Now, it was brought up in a very early motion, not before the trial judge, but in the pre-trial stuff with his original counsel. And that judge did not rule on it, or he ruled against them at the time, but it is not brought
During
up.
the extradition?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know when exactly it was brought up, but it was before he got his current judge, who is the trial judge in the case. And we haven't seen the pretrial motions come out, that they're due on July 1st. We just found out. So I'm assuming they're going to be raising the question, but I'm trying to get other lawyers to look at it and tell me I'm wrong, at least.
Yeah, I'll take another look at it again. So I have not read the statutes, honestly, since probably, last year when most of this went down. But I somehow recall I think there was a provocation section in one of the self-defense statutes that said that if you are, the initial provoker of the ordeal, then you can't suddenly claim self-defense. And I thought that when I was reading, I read a lot of those same comments. I know what you're talking about. It was sort of like the idea was that because he was in possession of something illegally, everything else was illegal. So everything else sort of stems from that one bad act. And I never bought that either. I didn't really spend much time looking at that statute. But if that was the impetus, right? If that sort of cracks the shell and then all of the other charges stem from that, you'd want to sort of try to unring that bell as best you could.
Right. The statute you're talking about, the justifiable use of force with provocation, because I've been through this as well. You cannot provoke an attack. First of all, you can't provoke an attack with the intent to use self-defense to then kill someone. So that seems absurdly difficult to prove in general. But the next thing is, if you do provoke the encounter, you then have a duty to retreat. Otherwise, in Wisconsin, you don't. But I think Kyle pretty clearly demonstrates or fulfills the duty to retreat. I mean,
he was running away.
Right, he's running away from Rosenbaum at first, who throws something at him, and as he gets close, which also there's the complicating factor of the other gunshot. The person across the street fires up into the air, and it's right after that Kyle turns around and plugs Rosenbaum. So I think he fulfills his duty to retreat there, and then he's retreating the rest of the time. Like, that's the other thing. He's actually trying to get away, and people are pursuing him. So I don't see that. I mean, everything's a problem when you're talking about juries in hot political topics, right? But from a pure legal standpoint, I don't see the duty to retreat as a problem. I don't think he even had one personally, because I haven't seen any evidence that he actually provoked the conflict. But I'm guessing the prosecution's going to say something like, "Well, his presence with the
Yeah.
firearm is what provoked the conflict." It's like, I mean,
Yeah, I think that's what the strategy is, that him being there in violation of the law was, some sort of provocation. And it's sort of that, like, that kind of the fruit of the poisonous tree that we talk about in law school. If you can kind of sever the chain of causation further up the chain, then everything else that follows afterwards would go away. And so, maybe in your, if Rekieta Law is doing the defense here, the theory is that there was no violation of the law there. Therefore, it could not be provocation or anything that would invalidate the self-defense theory. I mean, I think that, I actually haven't seen much pretrial motions in this case. I haven't seen a lot of stuff flying back and forth, which I was kind of excited today that they scheduled a bunch of dates out in the future and they set some hard deadlines, jury
right.
questionnaires and some discovery demands and things like that. So we're going to start to, I think, peel more of this case back. But I think we all got a little bit, uh, very, let's say, happy, very overly comfortable with how Minnesota handled their cases, right? We had access to everything
Mm-hmm.
in the Chauvin case, and now it's sort of like I go around to these other courts, and there's sparse records, and we're not seeing a lot of material, and it makes it a little bit harder to analyze.
Yeah, Minnesota only does that for very rare high profile cases. The rest of them, you have to physically go into a courthouse, even if you're a lawyer in the state. And it drives me insane.
Yeah, what they did, that is insane. That's actually, like, crazy that it is that cumbersome, but the Chauvin thing was amazing. I mean,
Right.
it felt like you were there. I mean, it was every minute was streamed. It was pretty amazing.
Yep. And it seems like they'll be doing the same thing with the other three officers and with the taser lady. Um, her
I'll be
case is, she's levied her objection to having it live streamed, and they said, yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
Kim
gonna get
Potter,
streamed.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I'll be curious what happens with some of these other cases, like, especially Rittenhouse, and then we saw the other one, the Andrew Brown. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one. I think that was out of
I'm
North Carolina.
I'm not. I heard about this Andrew Brown shooting, and I know nothing about it. Can you give me like a summary?
Yeah, so this was an interesting one. This guy, of course, a bunch of white cops, black guy. He was in a vehicle, and as he sort of, I think they might have been feds or local cops. I don't recall, but I think it was local cops. They were serving a drug warrant. Of course, it's always a drug warrant. They come to this guy's house, and he's in a car, and he's sort of, trying to leave. And at one moment, he's surrounded by about 5 or 6 different police officers. During the sort of escape attempt, one officer at one point is standing right in front of the vehicle. So
Mm,
as he is driving, now the allegation, of course, is that was
that's a deadly
borderline
weapon,
assault with a
right?
deadly weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's really quick. If you watch the video, the officer just jumps out of the way really quickly before he starts firing his gun. And then there's nobody in front of the vehicle. So then the car starts driving away. As the car is driving, now you've got this sort of line, this row of officers who are behind the vehicle firing their weapons into the back of the vehicle. Well, one of
Right.
the bullets goes into the back of the vehicle, hits the guy in the back of the head. He's dead. So he's got a gunshot on the shoulder, and he's got a gunshot in the back of the head. And the in North Carolina, apparently there's some rule that they don't release body cameras unless it's approved by a judge, which is unusual because we can get them, directly from the prosecutor's office or even file a public record request. And that apparently can't happen there. So this judge says, no, we're not going to release anything. Ben Crump is the attorney who is representing the Floyd family, got them 27 million. He's representing the Brown family. So they are only allowed to see little bits and pieces of the body camera footage. The prosecution is just not letting them do that. So they
Right.
go in, they watch it. They say this thing's a nightmare. I think this week we had the district attorney come out from North Carolina and say he's reviewed the footage and he's not going to be filing any charges. And it's one of those that you just don't know. And now we're trying to decide what the appropriate course of action is for courts and for prosecutors and for defendants. How do we navigate these cases? Do we go the Chauvin model where we release everything? We had multiple angles that one day. Of course, most of that was civilian footage, but we also got body cameras. We had total transparency, full access to the entire trial, all the documents, everything was out in public. Then we see what happened. It was kind of a disaster. It was an absolute mess. The entire trial, media circus, political circus, jury circus, riots. It was chaos. So then, what's the alternative approach? Do you do what this North Carolina judge did? Do you just not release the body cameras and just say, no, sorry, the defendant has due process rights. We're not going to put this stuff out in the public because you guys are going to convict him in the court of public opinion. He's not going to get a fair trial. Look what happened with Chauvin.
Right.
So then the judge says, we're not going to let it out. And then people like me are screaming, well, what about accountability and transparency? And we want to see everything. Don't hide it, because we know what you people do when you hide this stuff. Nothing gets done. You get a bunch of, corrupt cops who get away with murder. And then, of course, we get this case where there is no indictment or there's no charging for the cops who shot this guy. And so now you're saying, well, it's weird, right? One approach, we got Chauvin that led to a conviction. The other approach, we get no charges, and we have a dead guy and a bunch of cops who, fired a bunch of bullets into the back of his car. So we have a tough conversation to be having in our justice system for sure.
Right. And I was just reading about a Louisiana case where a guy led cops on a high-speed chase, crashes his car. The cops tell the family that the guy dies from the crash. What they finally have gotten the body camera footage. It's 46 minutes. And the guy's alive for a good chunk of that. And they drag him out of the car. They're beating on him. They put him in a chokehold. And he ends up he ends up handcuffed, foot cuffed, face down, and dies in the street. And it's like, the narrative was he died in a high-speed crash, and that's an easy, clean narrative, right? Like, well, you shouldn't have been running from the cops, which he definitely still shouldn't have. But at the same time, if he didn't die in the crash and then they pull him out and kill him, well, that's not okay either. But you can imagine these guys are pissed, right? Like, this guy's running, making it dangerous. They're heated when they get there. And so it's like, well, what is the answer in this stuff? And this is body cam footage, I think, that's been on hold for 2 years now in the Louisiana case. And we've seen that in a couple other cases where the body cam footage comes out a year, 2 years after the event, and it changes the whole narrative that's been going on. We see that police departments are writing press releases that word the encounters very favorably, and then you get to the encounter and you're like, wait a minute, not so much. And I've seen a couple come out of your state that still blow my mind. Like, they're some of the worst ones. You got Daniel Shaver, who was killed in a La Quinta, which is just, that's embarrassing. You never want to die in a La Quinta. And then, then the other guy who, he gets a knock on his door by the police. It's two cops, and he opens the door. It's like 11 o'clock at night or whatever, and he's got a handgun. And the second he sees the cops, he goes to put the handgun down. They plug him. Like, the guy behind him shoots him. And it's like, where are we going with all these police encounters? And how much leeway do we give police? Do we need to start doing more like mental health breaks for cops? Because I can imagine, like, you go to one thing, it's a high heated domestic violence case or something really horrific, and then you go to the next thing, and that sort of pent up emotion can leak out into the next encounter. I don't know, man. I don't know what we're supposed to do with this stuff.
It's a complicated question. It's a complicated problem. I've had a lot of conversations about it, and I've spoken to a lot of police officers about it. And I think they're also confused about this. And I recognize my biases. I recognize that I'm a criminal defense lawyer, right? So I'm always looking for the defendant. I'm always looking and defaulting towards the presumption of innocence and justice. And I think that police, they're supposed to be the people who wait that split second, right? They're supposed to be the person who just delays a little bit. And they're supposed to be that guy. You told a story about, an officer who kind of, was mad at that guy after the high speed chase, right? They're mad. They're angry. They're supposed to not let that happen, right? They're supposed to be professionals, the pros in the room. Everybody else can, let their emotions get a hold of them, or everybody else can react and just shoot somebody at a pin drop. but the police are supposed to be trained to a higher degree. That's why we give them, a monopoly on power and a badge and a gun and a lot of authority to do a lot of stuff. And so, I recognize my default that they should be held to a higher standard, but I also recognize that I've got a pretty big blind spot in my analyses, right? I've never been an officer. I've never
Yeah.
worked on that side of the aisle, and I really don't know what it's like to be over there. And so I would think that an approach that would work would bring both sides together, and that we could actually work on some meaningful reforms. And I've got a whole list of those, revisions on qualified immunity. I really have a huge problem with police unions. I absolutely hate a lot of the contracts that are negotiated between police departments, the unions, and the city councils. A lot of them provide for just blanket, in my opinion, corruption. I mean, they sort of purge police files after a certain period of time. Personnel records are deleted and not disclosed. And there's a lot of bureaucratic uh, gray areas where bad cops can just kind of hide out for a long period of time. And so I've got a lot of questions about how we can improve that. But I can tell you this: I don't think defunding the police is the answer. I thought I don't know where the hell that came from.
That's that is like the agitator's wet dream, because we saw it happen up in Portland or whatever in the Chaz, right? The police disappear, and then suddenly there's a private police force. And while the private police force needs to collect the tax to go ahead and make sure that they're able to keep funded. And so we saw that guy, my personal hero, by the way, Raz from the Chaz, going around offering protection for the low price of like $500 a month to every business on the block. That guy,
it didn't take long.
That guy, he was on it. It's like, have you been waiting for this your whole life? It's like, this is my moment. I get to rise up. But yeah, that's the agitator. I think the agitator, the protester, the mentality that we've been building in post-secondary education, really, amongst this class of people. And really, I think post-secondary educated people are a class amongst themselves, especially when you get past like 2010 and we start to see just a whole different breed of thought coming out. And it reminds me of the 60s, but almost in a different way. And you've got these people who think that if you just abolish the police force, well, then the citizen police can come take over. And it's like, well, but the police are able to function because we do those things you mentioned. We give them a monopoly on power. One of the things that kind of blew my mind when I was thinking about it on the Chauvin trial, people said, why didn't someone go Spartan kick him off of George Floyd? It's like, well, here's the thing. If someone comes up and kicks Chauvin off of Floyd doesn't die. Maybe. I don't know. It depends on if he's actually killed, but the working theory that Chauvin affected the death, right? So he prevents the death by Derek Chauvin. Well, now you've got a 4th degree felony assault and a resisting arrest charge, and Chauvin did nothing wrong at that point. Whereas the reality that we have is Chauvin is convicted for murder. So it's pretty interesting that monopoly on power is so powerful that breaking it changes the whole scenario and changes the wrongful act into a rightful act, which is weird when you think about it. If Chauvin kneeling on Floyd is wrong, it's wrong whether someone Spartan kicks him off or not. But if they Spartan kick him, then they're in the wrong and he's in the right. And that's the if you have a civilian police force that is not given that monopoly on power, is not given deference in how they use force, then you don't have an effective way to actually police anybody. There's the meme of the citizen's arrest, right? But do you know of any effective citizen's arrest ever occurring? Like in modern times, I should say, where it doesn't. It's going to end up with an assault charge, a false imprisonment charge, something like that. Because while we say, a citizen could affect the arrest of someone else, it's literally like, you need to stay here, please, or come with me, please, to the police station. And that's about all you can do. The moment you put your hands on them, you're overstepping your bounds. You don't have that monopoly on force anymore. But I do think there's reforms that need to take place. And I sympathize with cops because, like you said, they're supposed to be that guy that takes a moment, but when you put yourself in their shoes, it's like taking a moment means they might not go home to their family that day.
Yep.
And they don't get paid that much. You know? Like that's
Right. No, I totally agree with that. I've never been a defund the police person. And I've been very kind of concerned that the narrative has shifted as far to that side as it had. It was kind of a weird thing for me because I started my Watching the Watchers show very aggressively. And I would actually hold up before the live show started. I would do these videos where I would hold up mugshots of police officers on my channel. So I would just take their mugshot from some cop that got arrested, and I'd hold it up and I'd say, hey, this piece of garbage just got arrested for doing something that he charged many other people for doing, right?
right.
He was arresting people for DUIs. He just got a DUI. So if and it's not to, to slam on him, but it's like there are these two tiers of justice, and there's these two systems that, police oftentimes can do things wrong, and they sort of escape some of the liability there. But I still empathize a lot with them. And when I was starting my channel, I wanted to keep the pressure on them, and I thought this was the appropriate way to do that. But then after Floyd and after Taylor and after Brooks and after, one after the other, the narrative changed a little bit. Now suddenly my ideas, which, back in, let's say, January of 2020 about justice reform, those were falling on deaf ears. Now those were sort of like middle of the road solutions, and we have these really radical solutions about like defunding the police. And I'm going, where did these people come from? Because they just blew past me. I thought I was at the forefront of this justice reform stuff about revising some of these union contracts. Like, oh, I thought that was like really crazy back then. But now these people want to literally defund the entire department. Like, whoa,
Yeah.
how did this happen?
It's wild. And they all came out of this protest culture that is like, I used to kind of turn up my nose. Now I used to listen to Beck and Rush Limbaugh and stuff like that. I still like the time I spent listening to them, but I used to kind of laugh when they would talk about the college situations and the Marxism being taught or whatever, because it's like, yeah, I mean, I went to college too, and you got your crazy lunatic lefty professor, but most of them seem just fine. But then as we watch like more and more, it was just that it wasn't as pronounced. And now like you've got kids coming out, and I'm genuinely asking like how anyone is getting through college not coming out absolutely crazy. And I think it's people who are going into college and they have such strong foundational beliefs and principles that they're able to just kind of tune out what's going on. But it's happening everywhere. It's happening in small town schools. It's happening in big schools. And it's a whole, like I said, it's a class of people coming out with these ideas that are so far beyond conceptual reality. It's like you told a 22-year-old, you fix the world with whatever you want, and then that can be your platform. And it's like, but those ideas we had when we were 22 get tempered by reality really quick once you're out of school. So they have like this short window of their idealism being empowered. And then once that happens, they run with it. Like it used to be, well, you got your college idealism, I guess, and then you got to go get a job because you got to get a house or whatever. And now that like whole thought process has changed, and they want to stay in that zone of protest and solving the world's problems by yelling. But I don't know, at least that's kind of my thoughts on it. But it's weird.
I agree with you. I think that this is something, I certainly experienced it when I was going through college. I had to take this women in other cultures class as part of my mandatory, you have to get like those like credits, like a culture credit or something. So it was like at the end of my time at ASU, and I had to just squeeze something in, like, all right, this fits my schedule. So I put it on there, women in other cultures, and I go into this class, and it was wild, man. It was crazy. But I was the only male in the entire class, and the entire class was just this dog pile on just what an awful person I am, and what a just horrendous a body I have. I mean, she actually told me to stand up and look at his body, look at how utilitarian it is and all this stuff. And like how much time does he spend in the gym? Yeah. And like, I'm like, this is weird. Right. But I fortunately had sort of the, I don't know, the stubbornness, not anything admirable. I was just angry. I'm like, screw this lady, right? I'm not going to let myself be sort of indoctrinated by any of this. And it actually hardened me more than anything. But, I'm not sure that is sort of continuing on today. We're seeing this actually being taught well, we've covered lawsuits about it. We just covered a lawsuit here today where on our channel where there's, a Christian college that is suing the Biden administration over their new executive order about, sort of allowing people to identify with certain gender identities and then go into certain dormitoriums, regardless of their biological sex. You have a Christian college out of College of Ozarks suing the Biden administration to sort some of these things out. And this is a new conversation. This wasn't a conversation we were having when I was in college about, gender identities and about, these types of divisions. And it is a complicated, very important cultural issue because on the one hand, you've got, a group of people who we don't want to feel marginalized, right? I don't have any problem. I have no desire to marginalize somebody or to bully or to belittle anybody who's of any disposition, right? I don't care what your gender identity is or sexual orientation, whatever. That's fine. That's do you, right? I'll be me. You do you. Go wild. And, I want that same standard to be applied to the Christians over here. If they want to run their Christian college the way they want to run their Christian college and have separate dorms, let them do that, right? And what we're going to have to see in our justice system and our courts is this balance. How is the Supreme Court going to figure all this out? We got, religious freedoms, we've got equal protection on the other side, and it's a mess. And then we've got this sort of entire class of people that are like professional activists. Their entire lives are almost being defined by their cause. They don't want to go do anything meaningful. They don't want to go to law school or become a doctor or, have a meaningful career in anything because all they want to do is play victim.
They don't want to drive a truck. They don't want to work for Amazon. They don't want to operate a CNC machine. They don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
It's the professional complainer. And it's weird to me that it's become such a thing. I can identify with you a little bit on the class. Mine was actually an elective though. I got hoodwinked. I took literature and film. It was this great concept of a class where you'd read a book and then you'd watch the movie adaptation of the book. You discuss the different literary approaches, the things they had to cut out and all that stuff. It was great. The professor was this very nice, super gay man. And my buddy and I are two, and I, at the time, me especially, like extremely conservative Christians. And so we're watching all of these movies about about all of these gay characters, which was fine. Like it didn't bother us. But one of them we covered was Before Night Falls, a book by Reynaldo Arenas, who was a Cuban refugee to the United States. And the book is actually really great. But he is gay, and he came up during the time of Castro, and homosexuality was punished with prison. They put him in Cuban prison, and then eventually he got let out with the Cuban refugees who came to the United States when they basically opened the prisons and said, go to Florida. And then he moved up to New York. And the book is his life story. And in the book, he has this very openly promiscuous lifestyle, talks about sleeping with 1,000 women, 5,000 men, all sorts of other like increasingly degenerate sexual acts that he did, because his life is defined by sex in the book. In the movie, he has 3 long-term monogamous relationships. And so my buddy and I bring that up. We're like, this is a pretty big discrepancy, right? And we got pilloried in that class. We had to sit there for 2 hours of people like just calling us hateful bigots. It's like, I mean, come on though. This is not the book. It's not even the story of this guy. But man,
but you weren't accepting the idealized, version, sort of the modified, more PC version of that. And that's because of your male patriarchiness.
Right. And God, the image of you and her, like, look at him, stand up, look at those muscles. That's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. I wish I could go back to school being the jerk I am now.
Yeah.
Because all of those types of encounters to me would
Yep.
have been so much funnier. Um,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
because I'm like,
Yeah. I would like to go back to that class also. It would be a different experience for sure.
oh, you want to look at my utilitarian body? Oh God, that'd be freaking hilarious. Um, okay, I had one more thing, and now we got lost in conversation. So let me read some more chats, and then we can kind of start to wrap up the show, and it might come to me anyway.
Cool.
William Smith says Nick Upper Echelon did a video about how Titanfall 1, a multiplayer only title, has been effectively destroyed by a hacker DDoS attack, yet Steam is still selling the game. Legal thoughts, class action versus Steam when? Balls or no? Well, balls all day. I don't know that Steam is culpable because they're selling a license to a game that happens to be down by a DDoS. I mean, that might suck, right? Maybe they should put a disclaimer on there, but I don't know. I don't know unless Steam is doing the DDoS. I don't see their liability there. I don't know. Do you have that's civil? So I don't know. You have any thoughts on it?
That's civil. Yeah. I can't, I would think that that would be sort of outside of Steam's control. And so they would just say, no, we're doing our best to get this thing back online. And
Yeah.
sorry for the downtime.
Well, and maybe I guess I don't know. Maybe Steam has control over the servers, but if they don't have control over the servers and they're being DDoSed and the company that runs it is just not taking care of
Oh,
it.
yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I have no idea. But I think that'd be a hard case to win. Levi Sorensen says it's a catch-22 when it comes to wanting transparency and this media environment that we have. It is. I was actually talking about that yesterday because the whole idea of transparency in the courts was to protect the defendant. But now we have the weaponized transparency of the courts, like ignoring people like Chauvin in those high profile cases. Let's just talk about the guy who's got a DUI, right? A felony DUI charge. That charge can keep that guy from getting a job if it's public because
Yep.
employers and society are bowing in to this idea that, well, everybody has to be an angel, and the idea that the accusation is the conviction. And it's like, what do we do now? Because I still desire transparency in the courts, but at the same time, I don't want people canceled from life because of an accusation.
Yeah.
So
It's a good question. And it's an interesting problem because we have a lot of transparency and a lot of accountability for defendants, right? If you get charged with a crime, your name goes on public record. You can see criminal charges on all the court dockets. In many states, you still have your mugshot get taken and posted on the internet. We have that here in Arizona. There are all these mugshot websites that have these bots that just come and they scrape the official government website. So if you get arrested in Arizona, you get a mugshot taken. They put it on our official government site. Well, they pull it down about a week later, but before they do, bots come and get it, and your mugshot ends up all over the internet in tons of different websites, and it's really difficult to get them off. So, talk about transparency. If you get even any infraction with law enforcement, you're everywhere. But law enforcement, that it doesn't really work like that for them. They don't have that same standard. They actually have the opposite of that, and a lot of it is really difficult uh, to to break open, to get to the bottom of what these, what is really happening within our police departments. And so if it's about standards, I would just ask that the same standard be applied to the government that's applied to civilians. And, that way we have one standard of transparency. But I agree, it's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways, which is why I think it should be equivalent across the board.
sure. Have you seen those the hot chick mugshot sites? Those are
No,
hilarious.
I haven't.
There's like the bots and they only grab the female mugshots and then some guy goes and like sorts through. I think there's a Twitter account. It's like the hot mugshot Twitter account. It's hilarious.
No,
Makes
I have
me
not seen those. That's funny.
makes me laugh. Snuggle Struggle says the mob have apparently murdered more people than the KKK when they were in power. The peaceful protester branding needs to be replaced by terrorists. Kyle just needs to point to the death count of the mob and walk. Well, I think Kyle just needs to point to the fact that he was being assaulted by every single person that he shot, and he also needs to point to that kill to death ratio and be like, "What up? I'm 2.5 to 0." Uh, EGP Production says if there's a citizen police force with no state sanction, then we basically got a mob protection racket where gangs will carve out territory to patrol. Oh yeah, yeah, but the thing with the professional complainer is they always believe that they will be the mob, that they will be in charge. It's the useful idiots of communism and socialism believe that they would be in the ruling class, forgetting that ruling class is a tight knit group. Levi Sorensen says great content tonight. Oh, thank you. BG Willia says Nick, correct Robert about the Stanford prison experiment. It didn't involve wires.
Yeah, so I can fill you in on that. So yesterday, somebody sent me a correction. It was I got the Stanford experiment and the Milgram experiment confused. So I just used the wrong label on that. Whoever that commenter is, I think you sent me an email, and thank you for that. I apologize for the mix up, but we were talking about, the Karen Gardner case. Karen Gardner was the 73-year-old woman who was, walking home. Apparently she had dementia or some sort of mental issues going on. This was a Colorado case. She was walking home on the side of the road, and two Colorado officers came upon her and said, you can't be walking here on the side of the street. So she didn't understand what they were saying because she's got some sort of aphasia. She can't really understand words. And so she kind of blows one officer off. He's a 27-year-old. I think his name was Austin Hupp. And so he is walking. As soon as she turns away from him, he sort of grabs her and throws her against the car. She's 73 years old. She looks like she's like 95 pounds, very frail old lady.
Right.
And as they're arresting her, they tuck, her shoulder socket actually pops out of the socket.
Ooh.
And then they go back to the station. Cops are sort of watching the body cameras and sort of yucking it up. They throw her into her cell, and she's, writhing in pain, handcuffed to the bench. And so we were asking ourselves, how do people become that way? How do you have these two cops who, see a 73-year-old woman writhing in pain? How do you just be, how do you get conditioned to be so inhumane to your fellow man? And we were trying to talk about these experiments, and I was referencing one of the two, and I got the names mixed up. So, but I think one of them's on point. I hope so. I think that's what that commenter was mentioning.
Well, the best part is I don't even know what the two things are. The Milgram, is that the one where they think they're shocking the guy?
Yeah, I think that was the one. And I think I got that mixed up with the Stanford one.
All right. I'm familiar with the one where they thought they were shocking the guy, but I'm not familiar with the Stanford experiment. So I have no idea what that is.
I think it was another like school one where the school people, like there was the one I think we read about at some point where they like barricade themselves in. You have like these authoritarians and you have the students. It was one of those experiments where you're sort of monitoring and observing how people become authoritarian towards other people, even if they were like colleagues, a week ago. So it's an interesting study in human nature. And
yeah, where they just arbitrarily assign authority to one group over the other. And then,
I think it was that one.
Yeah, and then they turn into just colossal assholes really fast. Yeah, I do remember hearing about that. I didn't remember the name of it, but yeah.
It was one of the two. And so, we got two lawyers trying to bang around with psychology studies. So
look, lawyers are experts in whatever field they're talking about at all times. Stormcrow 9000 says this Marxist rhetoric has infected the military for years. Was in the Navy 10 years ago, and we were pelted with anti-racism / sex assault training every quarter. Hated the implication we were evil. One of the reasons I left. EGP Production says, should Boogie get the death penalty? That's a good question. Are you familiar with Boogie 2988 in his case?
I'm not.
Oh, okay. This is one you got to cover it because it's a YouTuber with a criminal case. And whenever that happens, you need to cover it as a YouTube lawyer.
Definitely. What's his name? Boogie?
Boogie 2988. If you want, you could just take the script from my video. It's brilliant and perfect. No,
perfect. Thanks.
Long story short, there's a guy who used to be on YouTube named Frank Hassel, not Frank Castle, Frank Hassel. And he trolls people. He's a colossal jerk, and he trolls people online, which is great. It's all part of the bit that he does. And he had been trolling Boogie for a long time, And then he told Boogie he was coming to his hometown in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And then he does actually go to the hometown, and he's in a public place at some like street thing. He's got a snake, does one of those pictures where someone's like, here's a snake you can hold. And he's got
Yeah.
it. And he takes a picture and he says, I'm in Fayetteville, you pussy, and tags Boogie on it. Right. Then these two go on to Keemstar's show. He does Drama Alert, if you're not aware. And they hash it out. And Boogie's like, come to my house and I'll bury you. I'll kill you. I will put you in the ground. You've been hassling me and harassing me all this time. I will end you, you piece of garbage. You come to my house, you step 1 foot. Castle Doctrine says I can kill you. He says he's going to kill him like 35 times. Frank shows up to Boogie's house the next day, knocks on the door, and just says, hey, what are you going to do? You going to come out? You going to kill me? You going to shoot me? You dumb pussy. Right. He's like yelling at him. And Boogie comes out, gun drawn, and wearing a Tomb Raider shirt, which is wonderful. And he ends up firing a shot up into the air in a residential neighborhood in a school zone. And then he calls the cops. Frank ends up leaving. The cops come. Boogie makes a harassment complaint against Frank. No charges get filed against Frank, but Boogie catches an aggravated assault charge for discharging a weapon recklessly in a residential neighborhood. So that's the case. That's the case. And
That's a case.
I think it's ripe for a plea deal. I'd be curious what your take is on it, because it's wild though. I can send you links because you've got to have the interview that was the night before, because I think that's where that interview is where it really like hits home what's going on here. And I think it really puts a damper on his justifiable use of force claim that he's got.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the picture of it, and he's standing in his doorway, just shoot like holding a gun up, like in broad daylight. Yep, I see that one. Yeah, so that doesn't look like on first glance, like a legitimate self-defense type of castle doctrine type of a issue, but I would say that I've seen charges like that. And actually I've seen them when somebody doesn't even fire the gun, right? Just drawing it and pointing it at somebody is typically enough to be an aggravated assault, because it's so close. Like the law, if you're going to draw a gun, you got to be very, 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 careful about the circumstances under which that happens. And this this image that I'm looking at, I don't think fits the bill on that one.
My favorite line from the interview is when he says, I'm not defending myself. You can't hurt me. It's not a good look. Not a good line to say right before you draw a gun on someone the next day.
Interesting.
Okay, so this is from Buttfucker 3000. College has been pushing Overton window for decades. The difference is that Rush's time was less insane, like musical tastes, except instead of 4-hour scream poetry, you get drag queen story hour and marrying a goat.
So yes, so I think also on that one, great comment, but also I think that one, that name, that username,
Yes.
did you see that story?
Yeah, that's from Judge Middleton in Michigan,
That's right.
where the guy, did you see what caused it? It was the guy's sister set up his Zoom account and set up his name that way as a prank.
That is so great. That judge though, has had like a lot of stuff go through his courtroom. Did you see the other one where there was a couple and the boyfriend was charged with some domestic violence offense against the girlfriend.
Yeah.
And they're both calling into a court proceeding, and they're supposed to be at separate places, right? Obviously, if you're charged with abusing your girlfriend, you're not allowed to go back to the house where she's living. And so you want to separate the two. It's called release conditions. You're not to return to the scene. So they both call into this court proceeding just to, he's been charged with a crime. She's the victim. She calls in, he calls in. Prosecutor says, hey, Your Honor, I think that they might be in the same residence. So the judge asks the boyfriend, hey, where are you? He gives him an address, asks the girlfriend, where are you? Meanwhile, the cops are already en route to the address. And so they show up in the middle of the court proceeding as that guy was on the Zoom call with this judge. It was the same judge. So that judge had that case and this new one.
I'm not here. I'm not in the house. What are you talking about? You idiot.
You're just like, oh no.
Yeah, Judge
It's like a
Middleton.
slow motion train wreck.
And then just recently, the Supreme Court of Michigan told him to stop live streaming after the Buttfucker 3000 thing.
Really?
And they told him to stop. And then the next day, they untold him to stop.
Really?
Because a bunch of people, basically the social backlash on it was pretty big. And they're like, oh, no, he misunderstood us. We want him to do the live streaming. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm sure the judge really misread the Supreme Court's intent when they said, we need you to stop live streaming because it doesn't look good. But, okay.
Interesting. I'm all for it. I'm for, I think, the streaming. I think I like the idea that we get to see what's going on. I think that's, if we're going to have to balance, some of these things, I think that the better way to approach it is to default to more transparency and then try to fix any of the other stuff on the back end. So like in Chauvin's case, right? It's, we're going to make it all transparent. We're going to live stream everything. All the records are available on the internet, but we're going to try to finagle things on the back end so that we can protect the integrity of the trial. Of course, that would be, long continuances, change of venues, very extensive jury questionnaires, and the list goes on and on. But, I think if I have to sort of spitball a direction to go, I think that would be the best compromise.
I agree, because one of my colleagues is a prosecutor and sent me a video from a court that can't be publicly released, but I'll disclose what happened. They're all on the Zoom call, and one guy sitting there, one of the defendants is sitting there, and it's one of the cattle call things. So there's like five or six different defendants on the docket, and the one guy's sitting there, and all of a sudden grabs some toilet paper. He starts wiping. They doesn't show anything, and you see the one prosecutor's face as he like is just panning through, and he goes, This guy's on the toilet. Like, this guy's on the toilet. And the judge's like, son, are you on the toilet? He's like, maybe.
Oh no.
All that stuff needs to be public. That's the spice of court right there.
How about, while we're on the toilet talk, how about the Supreme Court one? Did you catch that story a while back? This was back during COVID. There was apparently there was oral arguments or something, or all the judges, the Supreme Court judges, like the justices of the United States Supreme Court, were all calling into a Zoom meeting, and there was a toilet flush. Nobody knows, what happened. Nobody knows what judge it was. Everybody's speculating. Was that Thomas? Was that, Alito? Who was on the toilet?
It was Breyer shoving his opinion in the toilet where it belongs.
It's Breyer. Yeah, it's Kagan back there, doing her thing.
Yeah, I do remember that story. It's one of those things. It's like, well, who was it though? Who was it? Come on. Someone's gonna have to own up to that on a deathbed, I think. RMS Chad says, I'm taking an engineering degree right now. We get lectured about not electing any female academic reps. None ran serious campaigns. I fight back by trolling, e.g. arguing for affirmative action with free market absolutism. Perfect. Buttfucker 3000 says, police stories are told like Peter Griffin recalling his prostate exam. Black and white, ominous, music thunder strikes. In reality, it's a 73-year-old drunk woman kicking, spitting, swearing, resisting, and smashing feces everywhere. Sometimes it is. Okay, well, that brings me to the end of the big super chats. I do $20 plus ones first, and then I get the rest of them at the end. But we're actually there. But what I always want to do is respect the time of my guest and say, you are welcome to stay for them. But I know it's also late because I do my show late. So if you have to go, you're also welcome to go at any point. But if you want to hang out and see if any of them are addressed to you, or just comment on them, you're welcome to do so.
I appreciate that. I'll let you get back to it with your crew there. I'll hop off. I need to go wrap up for the night. You're a night owl, man. I don't know how you stay. You go for 3 hours? Is this kind of a usual time?
I do 3 hours, and then I typically do another 2 to 3 hours on Twitch after this because I'm an idiot.
You're kidding me. You keep going?
Mm-hmm.
Good for you. That's a lot of work. And look, people don't appreciate that. I've done some long streams before. I did I think a 5-hour stream back during the election on election night. That is a lot of work, my friend. So, kudos to you for being able to grind through it.
You got to commit to a 24-hour stream for your chat. You got to do it. That's the $100,000 thing, or 100,000 follower subscriber thing. You got to do the.
Is that a thing?
I'm saying it is.
I know you are.
I agreed to it like an idiot. I've already done one. I did one
24 hours?
Yeah, I did one at 24,000 subscribers. And then I dumbly agreed to do another one at 100,000 because I thought I was in a dark place where my channel didn't grow for like a year. And so I thought I'm never getting there. And so I was like, sure, I'll do one. And then I blew past it, and now I have to do it at some point. But it's really hard to plan a whole day.
That's a long time, my friend. That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so when it happens, I'll probably send you an invitation to pop in at any time during it. But
yeah, I'd be there, ready and willing to support you on that. Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for hanging out as long as you did. Make sure, guys, to go check out Robert's channel. That's the Angry Baneling has been pasting the link in the chat, which is great. It's also in the description. Also, check out watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Go support what Robert's doing. Really great stuff on his channel. Do you do Locals exclusive content too?
Yeah, so we are actually having our first Locals meetup. We're doing a monthly meetup tomorrow at 4 p.m. It's via Zoom, so it's a private Zoom thing. So if you want to, go check that out. We're trying to sort of do things a little bit different than what we're doing on YouTube. So if any of that sounds fun, we'd really appreciate it. And thanks for plugging that. And and thanks to you, Nick, and your audience. I mean, this was a lot of fun. I think we have a lot in common, and I appreciate having a good conversation with somebody else who sort of thinking about the hard issues. And I can see that you got a lot of momentum here going in the right direction. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and chat with you tonight.
My pleasure, man. You're welcome anytime. And let me know if you ever need some idiot in Minnesota's commentary on something. I'm always happy.
Cool. No, I appreciate it. I think we'll be hanging out a lot more in the future, and I appreciate it again.
All right, man. Well, thanks a bunch. I'll let you go. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Peace. Okay, here, just a second. Let me exit out of this. Well, that was awesome. I really enjoyed talking with Robert there. It was good. He's a good sport on the degeneracy of the chat. Why do you guys do this to me? Every time I get some nice, respectable guest, it's like, here, look at this guy. This guy's out there fighting for criminal defendants every single day. He's out there fighting for justice on a demonetized channel. Oh my God. He's doing this for free. And he puts out a great show. And then he comes on and you guys are like, how big and hairy should the testicles be on your futa? And yes, that Federal Unemployment Tax Act. Yeah. I caught that. You and your 2 receptacles, you scumbag. The 5 acre. What? Here I am trying to keep a straight face. Oh my gosh. No, Robert's super cool. Really like to talk to him. I don't know what I can do to help on his channel. I genuinely did not know his channel had been demonetized. But I can't make any promises, but the second I heard that, my brain said, I'm reaching out to my YouTube person when this stream is over. I'm emailing them and saying, hey, I know it's not for me, but can you please have someone look at this channel's monetization? It should be on definitely and immediately. I hope, I don't know if I can do anything for it, but I will definitely be reaching out to my partner manager to ask for some help on that, because that is atrocious. His content is very good, very effective, informative, and it should definitely not be demonetized. Fuck, man, I told you it's Robert Gruler. His name's in the title. His channel's in the description. It's been spammed by Angry Baneling from Imaginary India all day. He's great. Robert Gruler, Esquire. All right. Scam likely. Oh, shoot. Says, this is a message for Robert Gruler. We are contacting you about your car's extended warranty. Oh, no. No T puns. You got to stop. Baronitz says, good morning, Nick. I actually got up at 6 a.m. over here to watch you live on a Saturday. You and your family have a fantastic weekend and all the best. Hey, buddy. Thanks back at you. By the way, Robert was on tonight, but Drexel is here at my house. He had 2 weekends in a row to come out this time. So we may be doing something on some platform tomorrow or Sunday. If you want to get a dose of Drexel on the show, we'll try and figure out a time to do it. I don't know exactly what we're going to work out, but yeah, he was happy to not come on because he gets to my house at like 9:30 and he is wiped out from the drive. And so then he's always like tired. And I was like, oh, by the way, I've got a guest on tonight, so you don't have to be on. He's like, oh, thank God. Thank God. So anyway, we'll do something over this weekend. Hopefully either play some video games, or do a daytime show. I don't know what it's going to be because we're probably going to be on Flash's show tomorrow unless he's not doing one. And Flash, the slowest super chat reader on the entire planet. The absolute slowest. How embarrassing is Flash at reading super chats? How ridiculous does he? I mean, it takes him hours, like 3 hours to read super chats. I'm like, Flash, read the damn chats. Okay, here we go. Timothy Reaper says, have you heard the rumor that Brie Larson will be playing the part of Luke Skywalker's wife? That would explain why he ended up being a soulless husk waiting for death's embrace. Oh, by the way, we're at 979 likes, which means we're really close. We're really close to 1,000 likes. Robert did tell me it was perfectly okay to drink on stream with him. However, I don't like to do that. So I do thank you guys for holding off on the 1,000 likes until after he left. So my pleasure. Thank you, by the way. We've already passed the 1,000 likes, and I am pouring a nice glass of Aaron malt with a port cask finish. This is a good whiskey. Yum. Gosh, it's so much better than the other one. The other one should be drug out in the street and killed like a communist. TLJ Screwjob says, hey, Nick, can I get a birthday shout out for tomorrow since you don't normally do Saturday shows? Also saw the link for Robert's interview on your Twitter and really liked it. Halfway through his 30-minute Chauvin update vid, he beat you, Nikki. No, my Chauvin update video happened before his stream came on. Don't you even dare. Don't you even dare say that he beat me. But yeah, no, he's really good. He's really, really good. Very concise, very focused, puts on an excellent show. Fuda says, Nikki, would you have balls? Would you have no balls on your Fuda if the 16th Amendment was repealed and no income tax and repeal the Fuda Act? Look, it's terrible. 16th Amendment income tax. Why are they taxing income? What are they doing? Yeah, of course. Of course. I would go with a castrati Fuda to save everybody from the income tax. I would do it. Pseudo meme says, I noticed that you were taking the brunt of the shakes. That's very admirable of you. The brunt of the shakes. What do you mean by the brunt of the shakes? I don't know. I don't know what that means, but okay. Wolfgang Deo says, balls. It's only gay if your balls touch other balls. So got to handle your food cherishingly. There cannot be any other answer. Wolfgang says, Trump wanted me to pass this on. Hey, Nick, you see Rob's background? A real background has no books on it. Stop using your legal eagle equipment and we will pretend your name really isn't Devin. Rude. But that's not, Legal Eagles books don't even come close to mine. Mine are way cooler. Buttfucker 3000 says, hey, Robert, what's your opinion on Buttfucker 3000 fail in Zoom court and Michigan Supreme Court trying to suppress the live stream? Also, is Kim Gardner the most unethical prosecutor, or is another one that's worse? Kim Gardner's, up there, but maybe Kamala Harris. Who knows? Joe Biden loves pegging. No, wait. Wolfgang Deo says, Rob, I do not think that drunk driving is really a constitutional charge. Would you support removing it and having policy be that a person be charged with reckless driving instead? Same with speeding within school limits, neighborhoods, etc. Not nowhere. He's not here to answer this. I don't know, man. I don't see the unconstitutionality of drunk driving being a criminal charge. I'm not sure where you're going with that. I think it, am I green screening? No, look, I'll prove it. It's real background. I don't know where you come up with drunk driving being an unconstitutional charge. I think maybe there's some unconstitutional things that happen in relation to drunk driving charges that should be addressed. Absolutely. I think due process rights are violated. In Minnesota, I have big problems. For example, if a client calls me, I'm not actually allowed to advise them on whether or not they should take the intoxilizer. If you don't take the intoxilizer, it's a crime. So you're forced to incriminate yourself without a warrant or be charged with a crime that has an equal punishment to incriminating yourself. That seems like an abuse of due process to me. So those things I think are problems. But just in general, I don't think that it's particularly unconstitutional. It is a good AI. Joe Biden loves pegging says Joe Biden states he's for helping black people. Then he can start by repealing 1994 crime bill and pardon people. However, he is disingenuous. Also, can he pardon people on the basis of race, or does it violate the 14th Amendment? No, you can pardon. The president's power to pardon is basically unquestionable. So if he wanted to, in theory, Joe Biden could pardon every black person in prison. Every black person. He could just go, I'm pardoning all the blacks. Man, come on. Corn Pop's got to be in there somewhere because he's a black too. That's Joe. He should be able to do that. That should be within his purview. I think they would have to issue individual pardons to the people, but they could do that. You know, it's only federal crimes that they could, that they would be able to do that for. But yeah, they should be able to. Jason McConnell says, did you see the 2 Epstein prison guards admitted to falsifying records got off today after a plea deal with the feds? So that's nice. Look, Jason, no, it didn't happen. Stop it. It's not real. What are you talking about? Man definitely jumped off his bed with a full flip and killed himself. Plead the Fifth retard says, hey, Robert and Nick, what do you do when people arrested are retarded and not plead the Fifth? Also, Robert, what's your opinion on the boogie firing a gun into the air and video talking, murdering Frank Castle under the guise of Castle Doctrine? What do you do when people arrested? You got to just deal with it, man. Lots of people arrested talk to the cops, and lots of them end up getting charged because of it. But you just have to deal with the fact that they make their statements, and sometimes those statements mean plea deals. Like sometimes the statement itself merits a plea agreement, and you say, look, I'm not really going to be able to defend you because you made a statement to a police officer that's recorded that says you're guilty. But we got to get people off of this kick of talking to the cops and I just want to tell them my story so they know. Bad Dragonite says, Robert, which chaos god do you serve? Oh, we missed that one. Wolfgang says, Rob, the main argument against India is that people like Angry Baneling go messaging chicks on the internet asking, please show Bob's and Vagine. We're pretty sure that Angry Baneling is a street which everyone shits on. Love you, Angry Baneling. I didn't want to do that, man. If he's got jokes can go so far. I'm not gonna mess with the man's staff like that, even if it would have been funny. He's a guest here. We weren't gonna do that. Wolfgang says, Rob, thoughts on Oregon County seceding into Idaho? Any thoughts on getting other Democrat counties seceding into Texas, Arizona, or other Republican areas? Besides Utah, of course, no one likes them. Blame Romney and Canada. Again, Rob's not here, but I would suggest seceding. This idea that state counties can secede into other states is probably not constitutional without the approval of 3/5 or 2/3 or 5/8 or whatever it is. 35 states, I think, would have to, or 38. They would have to actually approve that. You don't get to redraw borders of states, and you don't get to have one part of a state leave it to join another part of a state without constitutional involvement. In my read of it. Wolfgang says, Rob and Nick, can we still consider the third section of Amendment 14 to the U.S. Constitution viable for the insurrection actions of Biden, Harris, Pelosi, Schumer, Whitmer, and others? We let them have a few months by themselves. They failed. A third section. Oh my God, what is this? Let me take a look at Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, blah, 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 who have previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of the state legislature or as an executive or judicial official officer of any state to support the Constitution shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion. Oh, okay. I mean, they do not meet the legal definitions of insurrectionist or rebellion. And they haven't given material aid and comfort to the enemies thereof under the legal definition. So I don't think it's going to work. Plus, we really don't want to start weaponizing the 14th Amendment against presidents. They tried to kind of do it against Trump, but they backed off of it. And that would be a real mess. Kool-Aid Man says, oh yeah. So I'm at one of my mommy's house, just tapping it hard, Kool-Aid sloshing everywhere. And hubby comes rolling in early. I mean, I still finished, but now I'm hiding in the closet, but I'm a fucking giant walking pitcher. Any advice for your old homie? Look, bro, you've been doing this for years. You know the exact answer. You bust out of that closet and you just say, oh yeah, like you're there to talk about the Kool-Aid. He's not going to ask any questions. He's not going to ask any questions. You just bust out like you're busting through a wall any other time. You got a long history of this. This is no problem. I'm bored 742 says tardy and flamboyant. Roger H, thank you for the donation. Wolfgang Deo says make sure to ask Rob how he feels being able to be not clinical. How do you really feel about aliens? Do we have a right to know? Axelian says already intimate. Wolfgang Deo says, I bet you really like to beat information off of other people, Nick. Yes, I do. Axelion says, Rob, Pegger or Peggy? Oh my gosh. Degeneracy. Wolfgang says, Rob, do we need a travel ban on Canadians? Yes. Noble Demon Tim says, OT, I learned pre-2012 EMI music. Was directly involved with the global push of Konami's Dance Dance Revolution, and actual EMI artists appeared in DDR. Tips on how to get to copyright law. What? Tips on how to get to copyright law. I don't know what you mean by that. Do you mean how to get into copyright law like as a lawyer? I'm not sure. Noble Demon Tim says, social cohesion is the root of DA stacking just to gain political clout. F that Chirac bullshit. Clout addiction is from Al Capone era Chirac. Wick Dipper says, Robert Gruler Esquire, would you eat the glucose-saturated bloody excretions of Tess Holliday's ass pimples to end the family court? Team castration. God, I'm so glad I didn't read all of these. I should send that message. I should send that to him. Say, see what you missed? Wolfgang says, Rob, any progress on the impeachment party stuff? Have we been recording impeachable offenses on our elected officials, like Biden yelling at us? Also says, could you expand more on being a defense attorney? Chad has some people that think they can judge a case based on superficial factors. I think we covered being a defense attorney pretty well in this video. Wolfgang says, the best lawyer has the whiter teeth. Nick, show him. No, his teeth were immaculate. His teeth were immaculate. He wins automatically. I'm not even going to fight it. I'll just slosh around some whiskey. Victor Phantasm says, I'm kind of poor right now, but if I get 25 to life for jaywalking, I'll hire Rob. Rate my scaly girlfriend. I'll send it to your respective Twitter DMs. Did you send me a scaly girlfriend? Come on. Like is that a vagina or is that vagina armor with a I think that's just an open vagina. I can't show that. I thought it was crotch armor with a crease in it, but I'm pretty sure that's unarmored. Lizard vagina. I can't show it. Vienticus Prime says, by the way, futanari means hermaphrodite. I don't know why people think hermaphroditism is something new. No one's seen Clerks. Here, I'll post the link in the chat. You guys can go check it out for yourself, okay? I can't pull it up on live stream. You guys can check out this degeneracy. It's not vagina armor. Like, I thought it was like boob armor for a vagina, but no, it's not. By the way, did you guys, speaking of degeneracy, did you see that Twitch has created a hot tub, swimsuit, and beach section? It's like just chatting, but it's just hot tubs. So Twitch, like, talk about missing the bus. The problem is Twitch has this issue. Where a bunch of these thoughts are out there putting their like way hiked up Victoria's Secret bikini bottoms, which are not swimsuits but underwear, wedged into their vaginas, and they're like, look, I'm in a hot tub, so it's okay. They have that going on, and their audience is primarily children. That's what they've got. So to solve the problem of this pervading the just chatting section, they moved them to their own section where now the children don't have to scroll through just chatting. You just click on the hot tub channel and then you can go and find all of them. It's amazing. They like, you misdiagnosed the cancer and you tried to treat gonorrhea and then you gave everybody AIDS. So good job. Good job. JJ says 2 clips from 5/20/21 on locals. Go follow Nick all. SE, yeah, follow me on locals. RicadaLaw.locals.com, by the way. And if you go there for free to get the notifications for the live streams and stuff like that. If you want to join, you can see I got feet pics up there. I posted a picture of a turtle on top of a dandelion today. I also posted a steak. And there's sometimes various videos and other content on there. But you can see it all. SE97 says pegged or pegging. Wolfgang says, Rob, would you be interested in becoming a VTuber? Stop it. Ford says, hey, Robert, fancy to see you over here. Wolfgang says, so Legal Eagle is a Trinity, good AI deepfake. And Wolfgang says, dislike until Lawcat. Lawcat is not No, actually, Lawcat is not in the house right now because Drexel is allergic to cats. So we put the cats in the garage when he comes over. Bald Giant says if Joe Biden had a son, George Floyd would have been him. Noble Demon Tim says the moment Maxine Waters becomes mayor of L.A. is when L.A. becomes into Detroit of the West Coast. Waters has a proven history of weaponizing race riots. Waters is from Houston, though, so that's probably where it would go. Levi Sorensen says, keep it up, workout pair. Thank you. Road Tech Trek Girl says, you guys are great together. Very much enjoying this Friday night session. Please repeat every few weeks. This late night get together would appeal to a lot of Robert's crew as well. My first super chat. Hey, thank you, Road Trek Girl. Sorry you got the experience of having to wait so long for it to be read. But it is much, much appreciated. And I would love to have Robert on more. It will always be, of course, with respect to his schedule, because I stream late. I always know that. And I always appreciate when people come on. Snuggle Struggle says, an activist at the Minnesota Autonomous Zone murdered a volunteer in cold blood. No charges. The zone was then given $500,000 from the state. Hypocrisy. Wolfgang says, hey, Rob, would you happen to have a book, maybe some kind of system, a system for helping me keep my life in order? Nick wouldn't. Lag. Matthew Brazel says, we've already seen what happens when a civilian police force is used. Chaz had one, and the college prison experiments from the 70s say bad idea. Wolfgang says, Rob, will you join us on Twitch for movie night? No. Alex Blackfoot says, make mugshots NFTs. There you go. Yeah. Especially the hot lady mugshots. Vienticus Prime says, Milgram is fake shocking. Stanford, fake prison. Snuggle Struggle says, so many people pretend Yuri Bezmenov's warnings to the U.S. were disproven / fraudulent. So far, it looks as though Yuri was right on the money. Yeah, the Yuri Bezmenov's speech warning the United States about communism coming is the most on the money speech that exists. It's just Robbie says, apparently I'm the only lowball shit Twitch streamer here, but it's a great platform. It's for genuine content creators. We can smell the fakes from a mile away. No, it is great. It is great. I just love what these what the Thoughtianas are doing to it. It makes me smile. I don't have any problem with it. It's just funny. Matt K says, with all the evidence against Boogie, is it possible that the prosecution won't bother with a plea and just go for trial? Unlikely. It'll just impact what the plea deal would be. Wolfgang Deo says, I was on Rob's channel during the lame duck period trying to help drive his election stuff coverage into investigating every question with 150 characters. Bad Vibe says, so Boomer, how long before Dems flip the script and demand more security and accountability on the unmentionable issue being investigated in Georgia and Arizona? They're already doing that in Georgia. The Georgia audit has demanded more security and accountability as far as the audit is going, where the county officials will not give up the ballots and will be in charge of scanning them. So that'll be interesting, because I'm curious if the county officials are the ones scanning them and no one's watching the scan, then there's going to be just allegations of improper scanning. So we'll see how that goes. Not So Handsome Jack says, hey, Nick, how do you feel about Crown Royal? My dad used to tell me how Crown was my grandfather's whiskey of choice. Yes, he was Canadian. Crown's okay. Crown Black is a little bit better. I'm not the biggest fan of it. It's not bad. It's just I like Canadian whiskeys have a pretty easygoing taste to them. They don't have a very dynamic taste, and they're not really like super bold, generally speaking. But they're smooth whiskeys. Crown is smooth. But I would prefer other stuff personally. Buttfucker 3000 says there can be only one. Bad Dragonite says fake background. That book is a paid actor. PG says they should secede regardless and let the SCOTUS deal with it, since Dems don't care about the Constitution anyways. That's an approach. It is an approach. Maxine Waters from California. Sheila Jackson Lee is from Houston. They both look alike, but how dare you confuse it? It's more that they sound alike, Fighting Slug. Thank you for clarifying. Buttfucker 3000 says, it's Under Armour leather pants camel toe. No, it's not. Jason Stevens says, the teeth thing is true. I hired a defense lawyer that had none. When he showed up, he'd be so drunk the counsel thought I was his lawyer, but I learned how to file continuance forms on my own. Donovan Olthoff says, Nick, I need whiskey or drink recommendations for a regular whiskey drinker for his wedding. Saw the Kentucky Owl one for $550 at a local store. It's great. It's one of the best. The Kentucky Owl Rye, the fourth batch, the last batch that they did, is one of the best rye whiskeys I've ever had. $550 is a tall order. Go with a Whistle Pig. 10-year Whistle Pig is a really good one. 12-year, 15-year. All the Whistle Pigs are good. Let's just be real. It's just a matter of your budget. Whistle Pig Rye, great. Snuggle Struggle says, eat the bugs, except there's a terrible fungus going around that eats at their naughty bits. Take a look. It's disgusting. King of all STDs. No, thank you. No one important says, Twitch, don't worry, guys. We sent those floozies to horny jail. Everyone else to the horny jail. Just visiting. Noble Demon Tim says, yes, as a copyright lawyer. The late Helmet Fest, former EMI marketer, recruiter, bigwig gave Konami free licensing while EMI used DDR for marketing. Okay, the path to being a copyright lawyer is to go to law school and then just take all the copyright classes you can. That's it. Not much more to it. Fighting Slug, we read that one. Wolfgang Deo says, drinking night with Barnes and Viva. That would be fun. I'm still waiting for my invitation to the Wednesday Barnes and Viva show. I shouldn't say that. I got an invitation and I was not able to make it that day. So I'm waiting for when they can have me back on. I would love to do it. The Sidebar show would be a lot of fun. But someone in, I think it's in Barnes's locals, or is Viva and Barnes, do they have a combined locals, I think? Sent this in, and I've got to share this. This is some fan art that they got that was shared with me. I don't know why it was shared with me. There you go. Look at this. Look at this. What do I do? What did I do to deserve this? What did I do to deserve this? I didn't do anything. This is not my fault. It's just Robbie. Welcome to lawyer status. Much appreciated. And then Noble Demon Tim says, speaking of whiskey, what do you think of the Four Horsemen? Shot drink with Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, Johnny Walker, Jameson. Do it live on stream. So what? Pour all of them into one shot? Or do you do 4 shots in a row? Sounds horrible. Okay. That's it. That was from Talix, not Pierre E. Chan or Pixlexia. That was from Talix. Icon of Sin. Pelosi has implants. That's why. All right, guys. There we go. It's Friday. It's not necessarily movie night, but I do want to do a movie tonight. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go start getting some food ready. Wolfgang Deo says, going to put locals and Odyssey in your graphics? Yes. Except I don't know how to do it. I have to get my artist to do it. And I've just been lazy asking for it. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Jane Doe asked you when your channel layout will update with locals and Odyssey link. Yeah, it's when I talk to my artist and then he gets around to doing it. Those two things. All right, we're going to do we'll go over to Twitch, we'll watch a movie. I'm not sure what we're going to watch, but it's going to be good. No matter what every movie we watch on Twitch is the best movie you've ever seen. Come join us. Yeah, Drex is asleep. So, we'll see you guys over there on Twitch in just a little bit. Have a good night, guys. Until next time, peace. Peace.
drinks a fair bit, but you realize that it just helps get his noggin jogging along. With his glass by his side and his kids asleep tight, we'll hear some law-splaining tonight. With his microphone muted, we'll laugh at this boomer until he explains it's all part of the plan. Watch his face become redder as he becomes meta, raging at idiots from Twitterland. From the white shores of Maine to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we have now. Oh, his lady is fair, and she handles herself with the grace of one who has borne many children. As the wife of a lawman, she makes sure that he has the time and the place to provide for them there. So pour out an Ardbeg, a Balmore, a Lafroig. The spirits flow as the ones who get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the tea post on Twitter as we hear law-splaining tonight. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we are now. Oh, the guests are all plentiful, from Dundee to Drexel. They bring their perspective and spice to the mix. But the reason we're here and the one that we cheer is the one who is showcasing us his career. Get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the tea post on Twitter as we hear law-splaining tonight. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we are now.